Good evening. If you could please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Please be seated. Good evening. I'm going to welcome you to the October 15th, 2018 Zoning Hearing Master Hearing. My name is Susan Finch, and I will be presiding as the hearing master over all of the cases except the first case, which I'm glad to be joined by hearing master James Scarola to my right, who will be hearing that first case, which is a remand. Let me introduce now Brian Grady of the Development Services Department, who will introduce the rest of the members on the dais, as well as any changes we have to tonight's agenda. Mr. Grady.
Good evening, Ms. Finch. Again, for the record, Brian Grady, Hillsborough County Development Services. Before I go through the changes to the conditions and withdrawals and continuances, join us at the dais tonight are to my left, Lewis Whitehead with the County Attorney's Office, and to his left, Melissa Leinhardt with the Hillsborough County City County Planning Commission. We have one change on tonight's agenda. It's concerning agenda item B1 on page 7, major mod application 18-0582. It's dealing with the hearing date and the recommendation filing dates for this application. It's going to be different than the other items that are on the published agenda. The hearing officer for this item will file his recommendation on October 26, 2018. All requests for oral argument then must be filed no later than the close of business on November 5th, 2018, and this item will be heard at the County Commissioner Board meeting on November 14th, 2018 at 9 a.m. So again, unlike the other items on this agenda tonight, this item, the hearing officer will file his recommendation on October 26th. The oral argument deadline associated with that will be November 5th, and then this will be heard at the November 14th, 2018 BOC and Land Use meeting at 9 a.m. That's the only change to the agenda. I'll now go through the published withdrawals and continuances beginning on page 5 of the agenda. The three items, A1, A2, and A3, are being withdrawn from the zoning hearing master process. Those are rezoning application 18-0646, major mod application 18-1192, and rezoning application 18-1194. Again, those three applications are being withdrawn from the zoning hearing master process. Item A4, rezoning application 18-0670 is being continued by the applicant to the November 19th, 2018 ZHM hearing. Item A5, rezoning application 18-0827. This application has been continued by staff to the November 19, 2018 zoning hearing master hearing. Item A6, rezoning application 18-0938. This application has been continued by the applicant to the November 19, 2018 zoning hearing master hearing. Item A7, rezoning application 18-1037. This application is out of order to be heard and has been continued to the November 19, 2018 zoning hearing master hearing. Item A8, rezoning application 18-1048. This application is out of order to be heard and has been continued to the November 19, 2018 zoning hearing master hearing. Item A9, rezoning application 18-1054. This application has been continued by the applicant to the November 19, 2018 zoning hearing master hearing. Item A10, rezoning application 18-1069. This application has been continued by the applicant to the November 19, 2018 zoning hearing master hearing. Item A11, rezoning application 18-1106. This application is out of order to be heard and has been continued to the November 19, 2018 zoning hearing master hearing. Item A12, rezoning application 18-1153. This application is continued by the applicant to the November 19, 2018 zoning hearing master hearing. Item A13, rezoning application 18-1163. This application is being continued by the applicant to the November 19, 2018 ZHM hearing. Item A14, rezoning application 18-1165. This application has been continued by the applicant to the November 19th ZHM hearing. Item A15, major mod application 18-1204. This application has been continued by the applicant to the November 19th ZHM hearing. Item A16, major mod application 18-1206. This application has been continued by the applicant to the November 19th zoning hearing master hearing. Item A17, rezoning application 18-1296. This application has been continued by staff to the November 19th ZHM hearing. Item A18, rezoning application 18-1298. This application has been continued by the applicant to the November 19, 2018 ZHM hearing. Item A19, Special use application 18-1334. This application is continued by staff to the November 19, 2018 zoning hearing master hearing. And item A20, rezoning application 18-1051. This application is out of order to be heard and has been continued to the December 17, 2018 zoning hearing master hearing. That concludes all withdrawals and continuances.
All right, thank you so much, Mr. Grady. Let me start by going over our procedures for tonight's hearing. Tonight's agenda includes special use applications. Those are applications that we will hear tonight, and I will render a decision on those special use applications within 15 business days following tonight's hearing. The remainder of the items are zoning applications that require a public hearing be held before the zoning hearing master before they go to the Board of County Commissioners for the final decision. Those items we will hear, and we will render a recommendation and file it within 15 business days following tonight's hearing, where the Board of County Commissioners then will make the final decision. Our hearing tonight will be informal. I will ask questions related to the direct testimony presented tonight. I'll call and question witnesses as I deem appropriate and necessary, and will decide all questions of procedure. Irrelevant, immaterial, or unduly repetitious evidence will be excluded. Any part of the evidence may be received in written form, and all testimony must be under oath. Hearsay evidence may be used for the purpose of supplementing or explaining other evidence, but shall not be sufficient in and of itself to support a finding by me unless it would be admissible over objections in a civil action. Our order of presentation for tonight's hearing is as follows. Mr. Grady of the Development Services Department will give a brief introduction for each agenda item. We'll then go to the applicant and anyone they would like to speak as an expert or on their team. They will have a total presentation time of 15 minutes. We'll go back to the Development Services staff person that was assigned the case, and they will have 5 minutes to describe the county's staff report and position on each matter. We'll then go to the Planning Commission, who will also have 5 minutes to discuss the consistency of the application with the comprehensive plan. We'll turn to proponents, anyone who would like to speak in favor of the application. Total proponent presentation time is 15 minutes. The same is true when we turn to opponents, anyone who would like to speak against an application. Everybody total is 15 minutes. We'll go back to the county staff who will have 5 minutes to amend their recommendation or any conditions based on the testimony we hear tonight. And then finally, we'll go back to the applicant who will have 5 minutes for rebuttal to address any issues they would like. Regarding the 15 minutes, as I said, for proponents and opponents, I don't think we'll have this issue tonight, but just in case, if you want to use a speaker to more efficiently use your time, and then the other persons can put their name on the record and sign in, that works just as well. But if you want to individually speak, we will just divide the 15 minutes up between you. We're happy, the county has provided us a citizen advocate. Maricela Medrano is in the back of the room and is available if you have any issues with how to file for oral argument or need help negotiating through the path of trying to get to, so you qualify to speak before the Board of County Commissioners. Mr. Whitehead of the County Attorney's Office will describe that in his little speech he gives, but just in case, if you have any questions while the hearing's going on, Ms. Medrano, Maricela, if you could just raise your hand so that everybody can see you. Yeah. If you need to see her during the hearing, feel free to pull her aside, and she will certainly help you. All right. Because the agenda starts with a remand, a zoning item, I'll ask Mr. Whitehead of the County Attorney's Office to go over those legal requirements for oral argument that govern your participation before the Board of County Commissioners. Mr. Whitehead.
Okay, thank you, Madam Hearing Master. Louis Whitehead, Assistant County Attorney. The Hearing Master will file a recommendation for rezoning applications heard tonight on November the 5th. After the recommendations have been filed, each individual who desires to address the board at the public meeting must file an oral argument request no later than the close of business on November the 15th. These petitions are scheduled to be heard by the board at the board's December 11th land use meeting. Oral argument request forms are available on the table located at the entrance to this auditorium. Please note that oral argument requests must be responsive to the hearing master's recommendation. Accordingly, oral argument requests should not be filed until the hearing master's recommendations have been delivered to the county on November the 5th. The board is not required to hear oral argument at the public meeting. However, under certain circumstances, the board can elect to hear oral argument from a party of record. Party of a record is an individual who fits into at least one of 4 categories set forth in Section 10.3.6 of the Land Development Code. In the event that the board elects to hear oral argument, parties of record who have filed responsive, timely requests will be considered for oral argument. Oral argument requests should clearly indicate why oral argument is necessary to address at least one of 4 outstanding issues set forth in Section 10.3.4E of the Land Development Code. Scope of oral argument shall be limited to the content of the testimony and other evidence submitted verbally or in writing to the hearing master tonight. The board will consider only the record of tonight's hearing and the recommendation of the hearing master in rendering its decision. The county attorney's role is to ensure that only individuals who have met the party of record requirements are allowed to address the board, and that new evidence or testimony is not introduced or allowed at the public meeting. For these reasons, please ensure that all information that you desire the board to consider at the public meeting is entered into the record tonight. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Whitehead. I appreciate it. As I mentioned, all testimony must be under oath. So if you plan to speak tonight, if you could please stand, raise your right hand, and I'll swear you in. Do you solemnly swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? I do. Thank you so much. Please be seated. I neglected to mention, when you do come up to the podium to speak, if you could please start by giving us your name and address for the record. And then when you're done, if you could see Nicole, raise your hand, Nicole, who's with the clerk's office at the end of the dais, and sign in with your name and address, because we are recording it. We want to make sure we get it accurate. At this point, let me turn the hearing over to Hearing Officer Scarola, who will call the first agenda item.
Okay, thank you for that. Brian, how about that?
The first item on tonight's agenda then is agenda item B1, is major mod application 18-0582. The applicant is the DeCobo Corporation. The request is for a major modification to a plan development. Marshall Robinson will provide staff a recommendation after presentation by the applicant. And I'll note for the record, for this particular one, the ZHM filing of the recommendation will be on October 26th. With the oral argument deadline of November 5th, and this will be scheduled before the November 14th, 2018 BOCC land use meeting at 9 a.m.
Okay, thank you for going back over the special filing deadlines on this particular request. And I'd also like to point out to the participants before we begin that this is a remand only, and it's for the purpose of clarifying the intended use of the commercial rental vehicles that were discussed at the previous hearing. So we're going to limit all testimony to that. If the applicant is here. Is the applicant here? Yes, sir. Come on. Name and address, please.
Albert DeCobo, 5425 West Crenshaw, Tampa, Florida, 33634.
Thank you, sir. Go ahead.
Good evening, Hearing Master Corolla. I just want to put this up-to-date aerial.
Sure. You know there's a microphone over there, and you have to turn it on. Uh, 180 degrees. There you go.
As you can see, this is a picture taken 2 days ago. Basically shows you where we're at. The perimeter walls are all up with the slabs. They're actually going to start erecting the metal Thursday morning. The reason I brought this here is just to give you an idea of the parking that we're going to have for these U-Hauls, rental vehicle, commercial rental vehicle, which would basically be right in this location right here as noted in the site plan.
Yep.
As Mr. Graley said, basically all we're doing is clarifying the intended use of these RVs, listen to me, U-Haul vehicles rental. And the reason we have to add to the public, because it would make it completely difficult to differentiate between who's renting, who's not renting. So for that purpose, we've limited it to 5 behind the wall, just as last time. We're not going to deviate from that.
You said limited to 5.
Limited to 5 vans in the back,
Okay.
outside the public view. The 8-foot wall that is being removed was somehow or other got put in there from the development stages, and nobody really caught it. So that's why we got a 6-foot, 6-foot vinyl coated fence that's going to be going in there, which basically goes around the retention pond that's required.
Why
So-
don't you point that out on the picture? Right,
That wall is right here,
yes.
which is adjacent to the commercial property adjacent to the south of us.
It's a fence, right?
It's going to be a 6-foot vinyl coated fence, right?
Yeah,
No longer an 8-foot wall just standing in the middle between the
Right.
properties.
Yep.
The,
but you got to get on the mic. It's all right.
and I believe that we have a recommendation from the Planning Commission for the flex from the adjacent property.
Okay. So the general public will just come in if they want to rent a van, they'll go to your office?
Well, really, the intention is for our clientele. But we have cases that they call and we have a van, and U-Haul may be up the street, because there's one right up the street, and we have a van that they need. We'll do the paperwork for them, and so that technically triggers public use and not for the intended use of our tenant base. So that's the only difference we're adding.
Okay. Anything else, sir?
No, sir.
All right, thank you for that. And Development Services.
Good evening. Marshall Robinson, Development Services. Mr. Scroll, I know we're only here to cover the remand portion of it, but I do want to give you an overview of the dates and the continuances that ensued for the BOCC meetings. And I have a revised staff report because the dates in the original report that got filed were
Oh, okay.
inaccurate.
Yeah, great. Thank you.
Mr. Scroll, as you know, this modification came to the May 21st ZHM when it was first heard, had a corresponding BOCC date of July 24th. It was at that July 24th BOCC date that they realized that there was a related item to be heard with this modification, which was a vacation of a drainage easement that was scheduled to be heard on August 7th. So they decided to continue the 724 rezoning or modification that you had heard and continue that so it could catch up with the vacation of the drainage easement in August.
Who is they? The commissioners?
The
or-
commissioners and the board. It was the will of the board to continue the case so the zoning case could catch up with the vacation of the drainage easement. And it was at the August 7th BOCC meeting, it was decided that, because I guess there was some oral argument that it came about under the record about this business of the commercial vehicles and, you know, to what capacity were the rental vehicles there and what were exactly the parameters of that condition. So it was asked to go back to the today's or September's ZHM hearing to revisit that issue, to which the hearing officer was not available in September, which caused this case to go to the October. And it was the September ZHM item that had the corresponding November date, and this October hearing has a December corresponding BOCC date. And so staff had expedited this case that we're hearing tonight, this remand, to remain on the November
I
BOCC
got you.
schedule. You get all that?
Yeah,
Okay.
right.
So with having said all that, yes, we have revised the conditions in the staff report to specifically specify that which the applicant had put in the revised narrative, which was to ask for the 5 commercial vehicles to be permitted on site as shown on the approved GDP or the proposed GDP, and for those commercial vehicles to be permitted to be rented to the general public, which I guess was not stipulated clear enough in the original application.
Okay, good.
Okay?
Is that it?
I'd be happy to answer any questions if you
Thank you
have
for your
them.
testimony.
All right, thank you.
And the Planning Commission.
Melissa Leinhardt, hello?
Let's grab the one next to you.
Oh, it's,
There you
Are you sure? Melissa Lionheart, Planning Commission. It is working. Thank you. The subject property is located in the residential for future land use category. It is in the urban service area, and it's located within the limits of the Riverview Community Plan and the South Shore Area-Wide Systems Plan. The applicant is requesting a modification of the current PD to allow for the addition of up to 5 moving trucks for customers as well as the public. The vehicles will be stored in the rear of the complex, completely out of sight, and staff finds the request compatible with the surrounding area, given that the trucks will be fully screened. As mentioned, the applicant has also requested a flex of the Office Commercial 20 that's located to the south of the site. That was recently the subject of a comprehensive plan map amendment from Research Corporate Park to Office Commercial 20. That amendment was found consistent by the Planning Commission and transmitted to the Florida Department of Economic Opportunity by the Board of County Commissioners. And then the official change was took effect on October 1st, 2018. So the current project is dependent on the Office Commercial 20 future land use category flex for a higher floor area ratio than what is currently allowed in the residential 4 future land use category. And staff recommends approval of the flex request. Based upon those considerations, Planning Commission staff finds the proposed plan development consistent with the comprehensive plan, subject to the conditions proposed by Development Services.
Okay, thank you for that. Is there anybody here today in support of this request? Okay, seeing none, is there any opposition to this request? Okay, how many in total need to speak? How many need to speak? Okay, yes, sir, it's your show. Good evening.
My name is John Murdoch. I live on 10702 Dixon Drive.
Sir, say your name one more time. I don't think I got it.
Pardon?
Say your name one more time.
John Murdoch.
Okay.
And I'm opposition on this because Mr. DeCobo, to me, has been very untrustworthy.
Okay, despite the untrustworthy component of this, we're here to talk about the use of the commercial vehicles. So,
Use of commercial
if you can.
vehicles. Mm-hmm. Okay. If you look on your phone, Google your phone, you'll find out that Big Ben Storage has been a U-Haul rental dealership since 2016. It's never been rezoned for rental trucks. So the permit, when he got 3 years ago, stated no rental trucks. No flags and banners. When he opened, he had all that stuff. And he opened without a TCO or a CO. In our last meeting, I told you he didn't have a TCO. In his rebuttal, he told you he did. But if you call enforcement, they have a citation. The number is 20171174, which is still in effect because he has no TCO. So he wasn't truthful to you in that meeting. And he has blocked the drainage on our street, flooded our street. And I know that doesn't do anything with the rental trucks, but if he's untruthful about that, he's not going to have 5 rental trucks there. He's got a dealership. We wasn't at a meeting in September last year, right after the hurricane. We wasn't notified, and everything he told the county commissioners was a lie. I got the minutes right here. I got it from Brian Grady, and he said he talked to Kathy Moore. He never did. Said that we was all satisfied with what he was going to do with the drainage. We never talked to him. And even the chairman of the county commission asked, well, she was glad to know that the residents and them came to a pass that. We haven't. And I don't believe he'll just stay at 5 rental trucks.
So it's your concern that you don't think he'll stay at 5 rental trucks?
No. And plus, we don't need the extra traffic.
So your
There's
concern
3 other...
Hold on, sir.
Okay.
I want to make sure I understand your concern. So it's you don't think he'll stick with the 5 rental trucks. That's one concern. And you're concerned about the traffic generation from the 5.
The traffic
rental
generation, because there is a charter school that's going in a quarter of a mile down the road. Mm-hmm. And their turnoff lane is right at the bridge, which is approximately about 150 feet from our drive. And we're approximately 100 feet from his drive. There's 6-lane traffic there. If a rental truck wants to go southbound, he's got to cross 3 lanes of traffic to get in a turn lane, which means he's going to be sitting there blocking our views from us getting out. So that's a major concern I have there. Plus, the man's untrustworthy.
Okay, so noted. Thank you, sir. Anybody else in opposition to the request?
Oh, one other question, sir.
Sir,
Need to be back in the microphone.
Come back up to the microphone.
I filled out on the last meeting a request to speak before the county commissioner and got approved. Do I have to fill out another one?
Yes. You have to
On this
file
meeting.
for oral argument.
No, they don't need to. He already filed for the first hearing. He doesn't have to file again because it's remanded. I do not think he needs to, but I think it'd be prudent for him to refile just to be safe. So, and Maricel's out back, and she can help you with that. So when you go out to the,
So I'm gonna have to fill out another one.
Just talk to her about that, and she can give you that
Yeah,
Sir,
information.
thank you.
especially because of the special dates that we noted. Did you catch those?
Yeah, it's going to be on the 14th now on a Wednesday.
So
Yes,
So
correct.
the oral argument must be filed no later than close of business on November 5th.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah.
right,
Okay.
November 5th,
Yes.
Okay, and then the county commission meeting November the 14th.
right.
Okay, but Ms. Madrano is here specifically to assist with that. I want to
Okay,
make
thank
sure
you.
you know that, so, okay. Yes, ma'am.
Excuse me. Hi, Kathy Moore, 10603 Dixon Drive. My property adjoins Mr. DeCobo's. And anyhow, a couple of concerns Bill's already, or John has already mentioned. I've lived on Dixon for 40 years, 40-plus years, and I've seen development come, and I'm not against development. Mr. DeCobo's place definitely looks a lot better than what we had there before, so we appreciate that. Traffic, of course, is a real concern. We have a lot of seniors on our street, so pulling out onto our street right now is very dangerous. I mean, it's hard now, and like John said, you have...
Giving you a little flexibility, but we're really here to talk about those commercial vehicles.
Okay,
We
well-
did this before.
Okay, but the people pulling out, like John said, division can be blocked from vehicles if you want to cross the road. You know, it's difficult to get across as it is, and if you have a lot of vehicles coming and going. And my concern is also that it'll be restricted to 5, because with the wall up around Mr. DeCobo's place, you really don't know if there's 5 or 25 in there. So, you know, who enforces if it's going to be just 5? And I'm not against him doing well. I understand his business is really doing well. He's 90% full, so, or possibly more than that now. So it's not like he's not making money. He is making money off of it. So I'm just concerned. We're real close to Big Bend. If you know the traffic situation there, every little bit just makes it worse. And with, like John said, with a school coming, they just opened Texas Roadside Grill right beside us. There's a big grocery store coming and a slew of other places. It's just going to be really difficult. So this is something, if it was like an income that he needed, he wasn't making anything off of the property, I could understand, but he's doing quite well with what he has. And we appreciate what he's done and how he's fixed the place up, but I just foresee problems coming from it, so that's
Okay.
my reason.
Thank you for your testimony.
Uh-huh.
Good evening.
Hello, I'm Byron Moore, and I live at 10603 Dixon Drive. We've known each other for 50 years and been married almost. I'm not necessarily for or against, but I just want to know what we're doing here tonight. What are you being asked to approve that you did not approve 3 months ago when we were here?
Well, fair enough. So there's a request by the Board of County Commissioners to go back to the issue of the commercial vehicle specifically in that application. And the applicant has clarified apparently that they are available to the general public. That's the only question here today. And so there's no other issues that have been brought before me or requested to come before me by the board.
Okay.
Okay? Thank you, sir. All right, anybody else that needs to speak in opposition? Do we, by any chance, have anybody from Transportation Review here?
They're here. I think they're out in and if we're discussing some other issue. But while we're waiting for them, again, to clarify, again, the remand, what's going to happen is what's going to be in front of the board when it goes back is the same request with respect to overall uses and the changes regarding the fencing. And this hearing clarifies the use of the rental vehicles that was at the previous hearing. Testimony was that it was going to be limited to just renters of the facility, which is not the case. And so that's the purpose of the remand, is to clarifying the conditions, that the intent, so everybody is aware of what's going to happen if this were to be approved by the board, that it'd be available for rentals for any persons, and it wouldn't be restricted just to patrons of the facility.
Yes.
So when it goes back in front of the board, the whole request is going to be in front of the board to make a final decision, including this clarification regarding the rental of those commercial vehicles.
Fair enough. And did anybody not understand that? Does anybody need any other clarification from staff? Okay. Transportation review. Good evening.
Good evening. For the record, James Ratliff, Development Services Transportation Review Section.
Mr. Ratliff, did you hear the testimony?
I did not.
Okay. Well, there's a concern. Are you familiar with 18582 and the request that, the clarification now that the rental vans that will be on the subject site will be available to the public?
Yes. I mean, this was not my case. I'm kind of tangentially aware of this, but I will get up to speed quickly.
All right. Okay. Well, I want to give you a chance.
Yeah.
So there's concern about the turning movements on those vehicles out onto 301 and how they interact with the adjacent subdivision to the north.
The adjacent subdivision to the north, referring to Dixon Drive?
Yes, Dixon Drive.
Okay.
And hold on, I'm sorry, Ms. Ratliff. I want to make sure that we get the question answered. Yes, ma'am.
No, you said subdivision.
Come, you got to come up if you're going to do this. Yes.
I'm sorry, you said
Name and address.
Kathy Moore, 10603 Dixon Drive.
Yes.
You just said subdivision. A lot of people don't refer to our street as a subdivision, and I thought he was going to say Panther Trace, but he got it right. So it is Dixon Drive.
All right,
But
thank
it
you.
is Riverview Country Estates, in case you didn't know.
All right, Riverview Country Estates.
So it appears what I'm noting from looking at the site plan is that the access point appears to be generally as far south on the property as could be. So there's pretty much a maximum of spacing that's being provided on the site that can be provided. This is a road that's managed by the Florida Department of Transportation, so they're responsible for permitting of the access. This would be considered a de minimis for 5 rental vehicles, and the amount of traffic that would generate a de minimis impact. So I don't know that they would be requiring any additional improvements based on that, but that would be going through their permitting.
Thank you, Mr. Ratliff. Appreciate the testimony.
Thank you.
Okay, anything else from staff? Okay, anything from the applicant?
I just want to clarify one thing. We're asking for the 5 vehicles. This is a site plan.
You got to get on the microphone. Either way, you can walk over there and get on the microphone.
This is the site plan.
Yes.
This is the site plan you have in your package. The 5 vehicles that we're going to park back here are part of the 21 vehicles that are already permitted to be there. We're not adding any more vehicles to site. Aside from the, I think, 30 RVs that will be parked in the back. So as far as adding more traffic, I don't see that. We're going to have the same amount of vehicles, whether each of those spots are full or not. This is on your package.
Yes.
Clarification from what one of the neighbors said. The property was TCO'd twice.
You know what?
It has no bearing on
Same
this.
thing with you.
Yeah. I just wanted to clarify that because he brought it up. As to the U-Haul citation, when we were notified by code enforcement that we were renting vehicles, and we immediately stopped and desist all rental vehicles on that property. We get the call from him every week, same number, same week, same day. Can we rent a U-Haul? The answer is no. It does, and I don't even know if it's still showing up on Google yet or it's been removed, but when that happened, we immediately ceased to rent any U-Haul. So we haven't violated anything. We stopped we just had stopped until we had this approval. And if it doesn't get approved, then we will rent them. We have 5 spots to rent. Make more money than U-Haul. It's a convenience.
Anything else, sir?
That's it. Thank you.
Thank you for that. And with that, we'll close Major Mod Remand 180582, and I'll turn this back over to Hearing Officer Finch.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Because the next items are special use, let me turn back to Mr. Whitehead of the County Attorney's Office to explain your procedure for the right to appeal special use decisions. Mr. Whitehead.
Thank you, Madam Hearing Officer. Louis Whitehead, Assistant County Attorney. Decisions of the hearing officer on special uses will be filed with the Clerk of the Board of County Commissioners on November the 5th. The Land Development Code provides that anyone who desires to receive a copy of the hearing officer's decision by mail must furnish the Clerk of the Board with their name, address, the case number, and a stamped self-addressed envelope. Decisions of the hearing officer on special uses may be appealed to the Land Use Appeals Board. An appeal must be filed with the Development Services Department within 30 calendar days from the date that the hearing officer's decision is filed with the clerk of the board. The following persons or entities shall have standing to appeal the decision of the hearing officer or to intervene in an appeal. First, the applicant, and second, any person or entity that A, is present or represented at tonight's hearings and presents either testimony or documentary evidence, or B, submitted documentary evidence themselves or through another prior to or during tonight's hearing, and C, is adversely affected by the decision of the hearing officer. The evidence that the appeals board can consider is limited to the evidence that is presented tonight. This means that at the end of tonight's hearing on each special use, the case record closes and no new evidence may be submitted. In addition to the case record, the appeals board shall consider the hearing officer's decision and oral argument by the county staff, the party appealing the decision, and any person or entity who has standing to appeal or to intervene in an appeal, each of whom may be represented by legal counsel. It is the county attorney's role to ensure that no new evidence or testimony is allowed before the appeals board in connection with this decision. The county attorney will advise the appeals board to disregard evidence or testimony that is not in the record. Therefore, please be sure that all information that you may desire the appeals board to consider is placed into the record tonight. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Mr. Whitehead. Mr. Grady, if you could call the next case.
The next item then is agenda item C1, the special use application 18-1240. The applicant is Brandon Seventh-day Adventist Church. The request is for a special use permit for school and child care. Kara Woods will provide staff recommendation after presentation by the applicant.
The applicant. Good evening.
Good evening, Ms. Finch. My name is Gordon Schiff, 1211 Northwest Shore Boulevard, Suite 315, 33607, and I represent the applicant. I have with me tonight Mary Rogers, who is the principal of the school applicant, and also I have 2 experts, Stephen Boggs with Boggs Engineering, and I will submit his resume as part of the record, and also Michael Yates with the White House Group. And I will submit his resume as well as the resume of Vicky Castro, all of whom are professional engineers and have worked on this matter, both from the site planning standpoint and transportation. The applicant, as you heard from Mr. Grady, is seeking a special use. The applicant currently operates a religious institution on the property, and this is to add 2 uses, a school grades K through 8 and a child care center as permitted uses. You have before you a thorough staff report. There are a couple of items I'll mention that I think Ms. Woods will mention when she does her presentation as to some edits that are being suggested in it. And also, you have 6 conditions proposed dealing with transportation, which Mr. Ratliff, I believe, will be speaking on behalf of the transportation, and there are some additions that he is, or some changes that he is proposing for those 6 conditions, and they'll be presented to you. I think they correspond to conditions 8 through 13, but I'll let Mr. Ratliff or staff confirm that for me. Let's see. Well, this is, as you can see from the materials, this is proposed as a 2-phase project, and it allows for the first phase being basically the existing facilities, and the second phase would be an expansion. It allows for the flexibility to be an expansion, either traditional methods or through portables. And the phase 2 expansion is conceptual at this time. But you do have before you a 3-page site plan that demonstrates the 2 phases. You have also before you a report from the Planning Commission, which finds that this is consistent with the comprehensive plan, and you have a staff report which finds it compatible and consistent with applicable provisions of the Land Development Code. We do have 2 edits, as I mentioned, that we've requested of Ms. Woods. I'll summarize them for you. One's just simply a Scrivener's error on the first page where it describes a request. The number of students for the school is 58, and the number of students for the child care center is a maximum of 38. Those numbers got interchanged in the report, and she'll correct that, I believe, on the record as well. The second request is that there are 2 EPC conditions that we had asked for a minor edit to. They're numbers 15 and 16. There's a report from EPC in the record that states there's no wetlands on the site, so we're simply asking that condition 15 at the end of the first sentence, adding words if any wetlands exist, since there are none, and also adding on condition 16 at the end of the sentence, if any wetlands exist, the same language, because there are none. And that's just clarifications. I don't think there's anything really substantive, but they're clarifications. And then again, I mentioned that Mr. Ratliff will go into greater detail, but he has made some proposed edits to the 6 transportation conditions. We've reviewed those, and we have no objections to those conditions or any of the other conditions that are being proposed with those edits as discussed. With that, I will be available to answer any questions you may have, and the experts are also available, and I will put their resumes into the record.
I just had one question, and it pertains to proposed condition 13 that talks about the parking plan and the vehicular circulation plan. It calls the parking, it states rather, the parking shall be provided in accordance with the special use event parking plan and vehicular circulation plan. Is that your page 3 of the plan?
There is actually a change to that condition. That is one of them that
changes?
Mr.
Okay.
Ratliff has changed, so he can go into that, and I'll make sure, let's see, that's
It's 13 is what I was talking about.
13. So it's now a changed condition, which his number 6 in his revised report, which I think answers your question. It says prior to or concurrent with site/construction plan submittal, the applicant shall submit an event parking plan consistent with section 6.03.13.c, referencing the Land Development Code. So
Okay.
I think that clarifies that there will be a submittal of an event parking plan.
Yeah, I was just
process.
in the use of the language where they call it a special use event parking plan, there was no such document that I saw, so I was just
Right.
trying to make sure I had
You
everything.
were correct,
All
and
right.
that has been clarified in the revised transportation staff conditions.
All right, perfect. That was my only
All
question.
right, and I'll submit the 3 resumes in the record, and we remain available to answer any questions.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Development Services. Good evening.
Good evening, Carol Woods, Development Services. This is a special use request for a private school with 58 students in grades kindergarten through 8th, and a child care center with a maximum of 38 students and 1,000 square feet of floor space. That was incorrect on the original staff report, but I swapped it out prior to it going to the clerk's office, so it should be correct as far as those numbers.
So how many students in grades K through 8?
58.
58. Oh, so it is correct. Okay.
Yeah,
And
it was
38.
incorrect in the table, and I swapped it out already.
Okay, perfect.
And again, that's 1,000 square feet for the child care center. The school and child care center will be in a 5,500 square foot building as shown on the site plan, and 1,000 square feet of that area will be dedicated to the child care center. All structures as shown will be located as generally shown on the site plan, and the maximum building height will be 35 feet. As the applicant stated, they've made us aware of the request to change the conditions regarding the EPC language. Those are just our standard conditions, but I'm happy to change it to if wetlands are present on the site, as EPC has already reviewed the request and noted that there aren't wetlands present. So that would change condition 15 to add at the end of the first sentence, if wetlands are present on the site.
And 16 as well.
And 16 to add at the end of that condition, if wetlands are present on the site.
Okay, got it.
I didn't get any objections from reviewing agencies, and we're recommending approval subject to the conditions as amended. And I turn it over to James Ratliff for the amended transportation conditions.
Before you leave, or Mr. Grady, maybe you can weigh in on this. In my review of this application and looking at the records that were submitted in the county's optic system, there was a request for a fast track on this.
Yes,
But I didn't
and-
hear that as a part of the presentation, that this was any decision that was requesting to be expedited.
Not the decision. It was originally scheduled for the December ZHM.
I see. So
Yeah,
it
so
moved up
it's-
in terms of the hearing dates.
Yeah, I'm sorry, the November
I got it.
ZHM.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Mr. Ratliff.
James Ratliff, Transportation Review Section. If I may, I will submit a revised staff report into the record.
Thank you.
As Mr. Schiff referred to, we did amend 5 conditions. This is condition numbers within the transportation staff report. Condition 1, Condition 3, Condition 4, Condition 5, and Condition 6. Essentially, and I think what you picked up on with regard to the language, the condition had been written to say that there was an event parking plan already and referring to that, and there in fact wasn't one that had been submitted. So this has been modified to correct, saying that they will need to submit an event parking plan, and then once that plan is approved, prior to or concurrent with the site plan and construction plan review process, there will be opportunities like other schools, charter schools or private schools, to amend that plan later, subject to Transportation Review Section Public Works approval.
And is that plan, aren't they required to do annual monitoring and
Correct.
reporting? And so those plans could be altered based on the results of that?
Absolutely, and that would be more kind of relative to the circulation plan. So there was a preliminary circulation plan that was submitted. They will be required to submit a detailed circulation plan, and if there was an issue that came up during that monitoring process, there would be an opportunity for them to come back and modify that circulation plan at a later time.
Understood.
And then the other changes were regards to the language of number 3. It talked about Hartford Road, which was, I think, just a typo. It should have said Limona Road. So just kind of other housekeeping clarification items.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, we'll go to the Planning Commission, please.
Melissa Leinhard, Planning Commission staff. The subject property is located in the Residential 9 Future Land Use category. It is located within the limits of the Brandon Community Plan, and it is in the urban service area. The applicant is requesting approval of a special use to accommodate a daycare and a school with up to 96 children. Schools are considered residential support uses and are allowable in most plan categories, subject to compatibility. Residential support uses are encouraged to be located in residential areas to support the neighborhood residential population. The proposed special use is also comparable to the surrounding development pattern, as the subject property is surrounded by residential uses as well as an existing high school. And based upon those considerations, the Planning Commission staff finds the proposed special use consistent with the Future of Hillsborough Comprehensive Plan for unincorporated Hillsborough County, subject to the conditions proposed by Development Services.
Thank you very much. At this time, we'll call for anyone who would like to speak in support. Anyone in favor of the application? Seeing no one. Anyone in opposition? No one. County staff, anything further? Mr. Schiff.
Yes, Ms. Finch, just a couple clarifying items. One, with respect to your question of whether we are requesting an expedited decision, we in fact are. If given the circumstances that there are no objections from the public and all recommendations of approval, I think in this case we think it would be perhaps appropriate, but we are requesting that if that is possible. And so I wanted to make sure you were aware of that. The second thing is simply that there is a circulation plan on page 3. I just want to make sure to note that for the record, but we will, of course, follow that or be consistent with that in our application.
Yeah,
So-
my question merely went to, it was called something that I didn't see a plan called
Correct.
that,
No,
so
the
that was
event
it.
plan, the event
Yeah.
plan was something different. You're
Okay.
correct. You know,
And regarding the request for the expedited decision, how does that help? Aren't you still scheduled for the normal, Mr. Grady, doesn't this application go to the Board of County Commissioners that all
No,
of
this
the other
is
ones?
special use, so.
It's a
this is
special use, so
Yes.
it depends on, of course, it's
Yes,
obviously
I
within
understand.
your total discretion.
All
but-
right.
But we did want to at least make the request.
All right, and so would 10 days be sufficient for you in the expedited review? You
cer-
have 15.
Yes, certainly whatever you can do within reason, we'd appreciate.
Yeah, it's not a negotiation, but I
Okay, yeah.
just want to make sure if you have some contractual issue that you're up against.
It's not a contractual issue, but there is some need to move forward as quickly as reasonably possible. But we're not going to request a specific date. If there's a way you can make a decision within the typical length of time, we'd appreciate it.
Understood. All right, thank you so
And we
much.
respectfully request approval. Thank
I
you.
appreciate it. Thank you. I appreciate your time. And with that, we will close special use 18-1240 and go to the next case.
The next item is agenda item C2, special use application 18-1314. The applicant is Kimberly Zanerco. The request is for a special use permit for a distance separation waiver for an alcoholic beverage 2 COP development permit. Marshall Robinson will provide staff recommendation after presentation by the applicant.
Good evening.
Good evening. I'm Kimberly Zanerco. I'm
You
representing.
can bring this to you.
Oh, okay.
There you go.
I'm representing my restaurant, Fish Hawk Pizza,
Could you give us your address, please?
15260 Fish Hawk Boulevard, Lithia, Florida 33547.
Thank you so much.
I currently have a license, a 2COPX. I am applying to convert it to a 2COP and to also include a patio with outdoor seating, which I have a new wet zone survey for. So I'm just looking to convert this license. The application complies with the distance separation requirements, that there were no more than 3 AB permits within 1,000 feet, and there are no residentially zoned properties within 250 feet. However, there are 2 community uses within 500 feet. One is Creative World Children Care, which is 342 feet. However, there are no walkways or sidewalks to get to that location. It's also separated by a freestanding building with a parking lot, a three-lane street, and it's on an opposing corner, like a traffic corner. Then there's also Fish Hawk Community Church, which is next to the plaza where the restaurant's located. However, there are no walkways. Once again, there's an incline and vegetation, and you actually have to drive out of the plaza parking lot, go down Fish Hawk Boulevard, and then turn into Fish Hawk Fellowship Church.
Have you spoken with the church and the school regarding
Yes,
your
we have.
application?
I currently have a license. I'm just trying to convert it from a 2COP to a 2COPX to a 2COP. So I currently have a license, which they are aware of, and they have no problem with it. There's also another business that is within the plaza and just applied for a 4COP, and they granted that for them as well.
All right, thank you so much for your testimony. If you could please sign in with the clerk's office. Development Services. Good evening.
Good evening, Marshall Robinson, Development Services. So the applicant has requested a special use for a 2COP AB development permit for the sale and consumption of beer and wine on and off the permitted premises. The applicant also requests a waiver to the 500-foot separation distance from certain community uses for the 2COP AB permit. And according to the applicant's survey that was submitted on September 13, 2018, the proposed area to be wet zoned with the 2COP consists of 3,801 square feet, which includes an 881 square foot outdoor patio area in connection with a family restaurant. The subject property is zone PD 89-0098, the terms of which allow a restaurant in consideration of the requested AB permit. The subject property is located on the north side of Fish Hawk Boulevard and east of Osprey Ridge Drive. According to the applicant survey, the subject wet zoning is 342 feet from the Creative World School and 349 feet from the Fishhawk Fellowship Church. The resulting waiver request is for 158 feet from the 500-foot separation distance requirement for the school and 151-foot waiver from the 500-foot separation distance required from the church. There is no direct connectivity to the church site from the subject property. The school is separated from the subject site by a 3-lane road with a landscape island in between the school and the road. The subject site currently has a 2 COPX AB permit that will be replaced by the proposed 2 COP permit if approved. The school and church are screened with vegetation. The school site is located down the road at the intersection where a freestanding building and parking lot with vegetation are between the uses. The subject property is located within an existing commercial strip mall. The subject property has frontage on Fishhawk Boulevard. There is no direct pedestrian connection between the proposed AB location and the school or the church. Pedestrian connectivity between the two uses require using sidewalks along Fishhawk Boulevard. There is no direct connection between the subject wet zoning and either of the community uses. With that, staff therefore finds the request to be approvable. Approval is based upon the wet zoning survey indicating a total square footage of 3,801 square feet. That was received on September 13, 2018. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
I don't at this time, but thank you so much. The Planning Commission does not comment on these applications, so at this time we'll call for anyone that would like to speak in favor. Anyone in support? Seeing no one. Anyone in opposition? No one. Mr. Grady, anything further? All right, ma'am, anything else? I lost you. Are you good? All right, thank you. Then we'll close special use 18-1314 and go to the next case.
The next item is agenda item D1, rezoning application 18-1179. The applicant is Hillsborough Farms. The request is to rezone from CG with restrictions to CG with restrictions. Steve Beachy will provide staff recommendation after a presentation by the applicant.
Good evening.
Good evening, Isabel Albert with Genesis 1000 North Ashley Drive. I'm here representing the applicant. I have some packages that I'd like to hand out, please. Thank you.
Thank you.
So the request before you tonight is for a site that is located on North Dale Mayberry Highway. It's 7.8 acres, and it was zoned back in 2012 for commercial restrictive. And at that time, they felt that it was appropriate to have a list of only specific uses that would be allowed on site. And then since then, as you'll see in the package, the area has changed. And your first page is the commercial site. North Dale Mayberry Highway has always been a commercial office corridor. So this area south of the site has always been very intensive commercial office. But if you look to the next page, you'll see the changes in the residential development that has occurred since then, all the way to Pasco County. You have an aerial from 2011 and an aerial from 2017, and it shows the changes that occurred for that. And with that comes the third graphic is the traffic counts, the change between 2016 and 2018. So we took a look at that. We provided that to the staff. Staff took a look at it and understood that there was definitely growth in the area and that it was time to change the restrictions to allow the commercial general uses, but with some specific restrictions. And so Planning Commission and Development Services staff took a look at that, and they found it supportable, approvable, and I'm here if you have any questions.
So the main gist of this is to add fast food with the drive-through on the southern part of the property?
There's the fast food with the drive-through to the southern, and then there was another use too, specific use. The car dealership was already approved, but that was the gist of it, yes, to the south portion of it.
Okay.
So if you see in the staff
the vehicle
report.
sales and display was already there and restricted to the southern portion,
Okay,
according to the staff report.
yeah, I mean,
So to add, the main part of this is to add the fast food as a use with a drive-through on
that was the
southern-
main goal, yes.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much. Development
welcome.
Services.
Oh, it's looking bright.
Good evening, Steve Beachy, Development Services. The applicant is requesting a commercial general restriction CGR, a rezoning to CGR to change the mix of the uses. And as the applicant said, the previous uses were what they showed what was allowed, the previous rezoning. This one is restricting, and I would add that the service and repair is also one of the main changes that's allowed now in the on the southern portion of the property in this proposed rezoning. It was not allowed. Service and repair was not allowed in the previous rezoning. It was sales was allowed, but not service and repair.
Oh, I see where it has in parentheses, no service or repair in the currently approved
Correct, yeah.
version.
So I think so the fast food with drive-through and the service and repair are the main changes for this rezoning. As the applicant stated, the site is along a commercial corridor. It's got property to the south is a car dealership. Office park is located to the north. A multifamily residential use is located west of the site, and to the east is also a multifamily and single-family development. The use of the subject property for CG uses will not change, make an abrupt change to the development of Dale Mabry. And given the existing commercial uses, the introduction of CG uses will not introduce any new incompatibilities. Based on the above and the restrictions that are noted in the staff report, the recommendation is approvable.
All right, thank you so much. Planning Commission.
Melissa Lionhard, Planning Commission staff. The subject property is located in the residential 12 future land use category. It is in the urban service area, and the subject property is located within the limits of the greater Carrollwood Northdale Community Plan. This request for commercial general uses with restrictions is compatible with the surrounding area, given that there is a large automobile dealership to the south of the subject site, an office complex on the north, and multifamily to the west. The site was approved in 2012 with a list of permitted uses and some restrictions. A restaurant with a drive-through and a convenience store with gasoline sales were not on the list of permitted uses. Essentially, the new request is for commercial general uses with restrictions that include the location of certain uses and the prohibition of certain uses. The major difference in this request is that the restaurant with the drive-through, Planning Commission staff does support that restaurant with the drive-through as long as it is located in the southern portion of the site nearer to the more intense auto dealership. And that has been incorporated as a restriction, as Mr. Beachy explained. Given the traffic volumes and the uses to the south on Dale Mabry Highway, staff does recommend that the Hillsborough County Board of County Commissioners grant the waiver to locational criteria. Based upon those considerations, Planning Commission staff finds the proposed rezoning with restrictions consistent with the future of Hillsborough Comprehensive Plan for unincorporated Hillsborough County.
Let me ask you one question before we move on. In the 2012 approval, the locational criteria was waived at that point as well?
I would have to check my notes, but I'm not sure it was supported at the time. I would have to check back on that.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much. Now we'll call for anyone who would like to speak in favor. Anyone in support? Seeing no one. Anyone in opposition? No one. Mr. Grady, anything further? Ms. Albert? All right. Then with that, we will close rezoning 18-1179. You go to the next case.
The next item is agenda item D2, rezoning application 18-1229. The applicant is Robert C. McGee. The request is to rezone from CN to CI. Tanya Chappella will provide staff a recommendation after presentation by the applicant.
Is the applicant here? Good evening.
Hello, I am Dorothy Cashton. My address is 9011 Baywood Park Drive, Seminole, Florida. I am the agent for Robert McGee, owner of 702 East Bear Avenue, Tampa. We are requesting zoning change from CN to CI. We will not be making any structural changes to the building or property. The zoning will be for vehicle and truck sales and an occasional commercial vehicle sale. I have met with all the required agencies for this zoning without any objections on this zoning change. FDOT had requested that at some point we close the driveway located closest to the I-75 on-ramp, but has since reviewed the fact that there is no significant change in use and no known accident history, so they feel that at this time it's okay for now. The Water Resource Service recommended that we contact the city of Tampa to see about connecting to their water and sewer. We did that, and the cost is prohibitive. We were quoted an approximate figure of $60,000. Thank you.
Thank you so much. If you could sign in with the clerk's office, please. Development Services. Good evening.
Good evening. Tanya Chapela, Development Services. The request is to rezone approximately 0.64 acres from commercial neighborhood to commercial intensive. The surrounding area is a commercial corridor along Beers Avenue. The adjacent properties to the north and east are Zone ZI and are developed with a supermarket, a gas station, and a convenience store. The properties across East Beers Avenue to the south are Zone CG and PD 88-0005, developed with a car dealership, a gas station, and a convenience store. The properties across the I-275 highway to the west are Zone Commercial Neighborhood, occupied by a hotel, a restaurant, and a convenience store. The proposed zoning district is compatible with the surrounding development and zoning patterns. Staff finds that the proposed request is approvable. I'm here to answer your questions.
I don't at this time, but thank you. Planning Commission.
Melissa Leinhard, Planning Commission staff. The subject property is located in the Office Commercial 20 Future Land Use category. It is in the urban service area, and it is not located within the limits of a community plan boundary. According to the applicant's narrative, the intended use of the subject property is for commercial vehicle truck sales, which is consistent with the Office Commercial 20 Future Land Use category. The specific intent of that category is to recognize existing commercial centers and provide for future development opportunities. Consistent with policy 16.5 of a future land use element, this rezoning also recognizes the development of higher intensity non-residential land uses being restricted to collectors and arterials and to locations external to established and developing neighborhoods. Per the compatibility policy 1.4 of the future land use element, the applicant's request is compatible with the surrounding development pattern, and Planning Commission staff does find the proposed rezoning consistent with the comprehensive plan.
All right, thank you so much. Would anybody like to testify in support of this application? Anyone in favor? Seeing no one, anyone in opposition? No one? Mr. Grady, anything further? Ma'am, anything else? You're good? All right, thank you so much. We'll close rezoning 18-1229 and go to the next case.
The next item is agenda item D3. It's rezoning application 18-1252. The applicant's Tai Thon Ha. The request is rezoned from AS1 to RSC6 with a mobile home overlay. Tanya Chapella will provide staff recommendation after presentation by the applicant.
Yes, sir. Good evening.
Yeah, hello. My name is Tai Thon Ha. I live on 2112 Curry Road, Luz, Florida 33549, and I have the land on 15111 North 20th Street, and I would like to rezone like split in half, so I can have the small land to can build 2 houses.
Okay. I note from the staff report that there's a discussion that your property, if you propose to subdivide it into 2 lots, does not meet the minimum width requirement for the zoning you're asking for.
Yeah, I heard
So
about
if this zoning were approved, you could not subdivide it into 2 lots without obtaining a variance. Do you understand that?
Yes.
And that's a whole separate hearing process
Yeah.
and
Yes.
a completely different application. So if that were denied, if this were approved but the variance were denied, you could not subdivide it into 2 lots. I just want to make sure you understand that.
Yes.
Okay, thank you
Yes.
so much. If you could sign in with the clerk's office, please.
Thank you.
Development Services.
Tanya Chapela, Development Services. The request is to rezone approximately 1.33 acres from agricultural single-family -1 to RSA 6 MH, residential single-family mobile home overlay. The subject property is located in a residential area developed with a mix of mobile homes and conventional dwellings. The adjacent properties to the north are Zone RSC 6 MH and are vacant. The adjacent properties to the east, south, and across North 20th Street to the west are Zone AS1 and are developed with a mix of mobile homes and conventional dwellings. The proposed zoning district is compatible with the surrounding development and zoning patterns. Staff finds that the proposed request is approvable. The existing lot is in compliance with the development standards of the RS 6 zoning district. The applicant submitted with the application, the applicant submitted with the application a proposed subdivision plan with lot widths not in compliance with the RS 6 zoning district. The applicant has been advised that a variance would be required to Land Development Code, section 60101, minimum from width to allow a lot width under 70 feet, as required in lots zone RS6. Approval of the zoning petition does not imply approval, tacit or otherwise, of any future variances that may be necessary for future subdivision of the parcel. Staff recommends approval of the request.
Thank you so much. Planning Commission.
Melissa Lionheart, Planning Commission staff. The subject property is located in the Residential 6 Future Land Use category. It is in the urban service area, and it is not located within the limits of a community plan. The applicant is proposing to rezone the subject property from AS1 to RSC 6 with a mobile home overlay, which is consistent with the Residential 6 Future Land Use category. The specific intent of that category is to designate areas that are suitable for low-density residential development. Policy 1.4 of the future land use element defines compatibility not as the same as, but rather it refers to the sensitivity of development proposals and maintaining the character of the existing development. In this case, the applicant's request is compatible with the existing development pattern. There are mobile homes and conventional homes in the area, including a mobile home overlay to the north of the subject property. In addition, per policy 20.3 of the future land use element, manufactured housing shall be recognized as a means to provide affordable housing. This proposed rezoning is consistent with that policy direction. And based upon those considerations, Planning Commission staff finds the proposed rezoning consistent with the Future of Hillsborough Comprehensive Plan for unincorporated Hillsborough County.
All right, thank you so much. Is there anyone that would like to speak either in favor or against this application? Are you in support or against?
I'm in support.
In support, okay, good evening.
And Steve Allison just happened to be in the audience and stepping, I don't know that I've ever done this before, but I just wondered.
Oh, Mr. Allison, could you give us your address too?
Mailing address, P.O. Box 82834, Tampa.
Thank you, go ahead.
Whether, it just concerned me that if he gets this, he's going to have to go through another variance. I don't know any of the details of the case. Is he only asking for 2 lots? Would it be possible for him to request RSC 9 and restrict it to 2 lots, just so that he doesn't have to go through another process? Is that even conceivable? And I apologize for...
It is possible.
And I think that just might, it might be a better solution.
We can certainly ask him if he would like to amend his application.
Okay,
all
that's
right,
all.
thank you so much. Anyone else?
That would require continuance and renotice.
Yes.
Just to,
okay. Anyone else either in support or in opposition to this application? All right, seeing none. So, Mr. Grady, if he chose, I'll ask him if he chose to do that, then he would have to continue to the next hearing, or whatever hearing would be appropriate to provide the notice. Is that
correct.
Right? Okay. Sir, if you could come back up, please. You have some help from the audience that has decided to advocate for you. And what this gentleman has suggested is that if you wanted to amend your rezoning application to RSC 9 with a restriction, that it would provide you the opportunity to restrict the rezoning to 2 lots only, which is what you want, with the mobile home that you want to develop, and you would be able to meet the minimum width requirement. So you would not have to take the extra step of going through the variance process if this application were approved. And what that would entail, perhaps Mr. Grady should step in and explain this to you, but my understanding is what it would entail is you would need to continue your application, request the RSC 9 restricted with the for 2 mobile homes, renotice your neighbors again, and then come back to a subsequent hearing after those steps have been done to ask for the new category of RSC 9 where you would meet that minimum width. And if you would like to have that opportunity, I'm glad to grant you the continuance to make that happen.
Yeah, okay.
All right, so.
Thank you.
Yes, and you should thank Mr. Allison as well, so, yes. All right, so with that, then we will continue. He can stay in with the same application number and so forth, he just needs to amend his paperwork.
Yes. Timing-wise, if he continued in November, he would have to renotice by Friday, so I'm not sure timing-wise. I mean, it may be better to go to December, but we can continue to November and then work with him, and then if it needs to be, it can be continued.
All right, so what is that exact date in November? What is the November?
19th.
19th, okay.
And the notice deadlines are this Friday, so that's why it's just a tight time frame, but.
So if you wanted to meet the November 19th, the next hearing, you would have to renotice your neighbors by this Friday. If that's possible, for you to amend the application and do the notice by this Friday, you may be able to stay on the track of.
Otherwise, we would go to
the next
December, December 17th is the next one after that.
So I have to send a letter to all the neighborhood one more time?
Mr. Gray, yes, you would have to notice just as you did for this hearing to your neighbors within so many feet, you would do that again and put a revised request for this other zoning district that allows you to meet the width requirement. But the staff is certainly able to help you with the particulars of what needs to be done.
Ms. Finch, probably the best thing at this point is we can continue to November. I think staff probably needs to have some further conversations with him regarding, there's other implications regarding going to RC9 that he needs to be aware of, and so we can sit down and talk with him, make sure he's comfortable with doing that, because worst case, if he chooses not to amend, we can just come back on the 19th to just quickly redo this. If he chooses not to amend, if he does choose to amend, we can work with him.
Okay.
He might
Either
come
way.
back on the 19th as an RC9, or maybe go to December, but we'll have those conversations with him.
All right, fair enough.
Right.
Then we'll continue your application, the hearing, to November 19th at 6 p.m., and you'll work with staff and Ms. Chappelle to amend your application if you see fit to.
Yes.
All right, thank you so much. I appreciate your time. All right, then with that, we'll close rezoning 1252, which has been continued to the November 19th zoning hearing master hearing, and go to the next case.
The next item is agenda item D4, rezoning application 18-1344. The applicant is Gabriel Navarrete. The request is to rezone from ASC 1 to RSC 2. Lori Boylan will provide staff recommendation after presentation by the applicant.
Good evening.
Good evening. My name is Gabriel Navarrete with Navarrete Drafting Inc. I live in 5114 South 66th Street. I'm the designer. I'm probably most likely the builder of this project. I have some information that I want to share with you, if
Okay.
possible.
Thank you.
We have a straightforward request for rezoning on this property, 5821 Whirlpool Drive, from ASC1 to RSC2. The two most important things that we consider in this situation is that we have a 1.01 acre. So when we divide this property, it's going to be in two lots of 0.5 acres. And the second thing is that we're going to be on well and septic. And we're keeping the distance that we need, 75 feet or more, from all existing wells and new water wells to 75 feet. So actually we are at 80 feet to the property line. So our septic tank system, both of them, that they're combined in the center of the property, you have the site plan with you, they are 80 feet from our property line. So we can confine everything within our property line without interfering in any other septic or wells. That definitely would be more than 0 feet from our property line. Saying that being said, the size of the property, I just gave you an information with the size of the property. Just within the very short radius of this property, we have 10 other properties that are less than half acre and up to 0.91 acres. So I think what we're requesting is something pretty much common nowadays, that people want to divide lots and get more out of it, out of the property.
All right, thank you so much.
Thank
If you could sign in with the clerk's office, please. Good evening.
Lori Boylan, Development Services. The applicant stated the request is to rezone approximately 1.01 acres from agricultural single-family conventional to RSC2 to allow for 2 residential lots. Staff finds no comprehensive plan issues related to this request. The Planning Commission finds the rezoning consistent with the future of Hillsborough Comprehensive Plan. In reference to compatibility, the residential 2 land use plan category permits 2 units an acre. The applicant has 1.01 acres and is planning on subdividing the property into 2 lots. The surrounding zoning is AS1 to the south, RSC2 to the east, ASC1 to the north, ASC1 to the west. The following zoning designations are on the east side of Willowdale Road: RSC3, RSC3MH, and RSC4. This rezoning is compatible with the adjacent neighborhood zoning. The problem is I discovered an error in my research this morning. This is in Carrollwood, but it unfortunately is in the wellhead protection area. So the property in the wellhead protection area needs an acre of upland per lot. So I immediately called the applicant and explained to them what happened and that they would need to apply for a variance to the wellhead protection ordinance if the rezoning got approved. So that was my error. Staff recommends approval. I'm here if you have any questions.
So a variance to the wetland protection area, the wellhead protection.
Wellhead protection area. I spoke direction from Dennis Klein and Brian Grady this morning with Mike Stevenson, who is our wellhead protection leader, and he agreed with me, and I've, from experience, have had a few variances for the wellhead protection area, less than an acre, but they handle commercial differently. Residential, you are allowed to apply for a variance.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Planning Commission.
Melissa Leinhard, Planning Commission staff. The subject property is located in the residential 2 future land use category. It is in the urban service area, and the subject property is located within the limits of the Greater Carrollwood Northdale Community Plan. The applicant intends to divide the subject property of 1.01 acres for the use of 2 single-family conventional dwelling units, which is consistent with the residential 2 future land use category. Policy 1.2, addressing minimum density, does request that all new residential or mixed-use land use categories within the urban service area have a density of 4 units an acre or greater unless environmental features or existing development patterns do not support those densities. In this case, the existing development patterns do not support those densities, which is reflective of the residential 2 future land use designation. And based upon those considerations, Planning Commission staff finds the proposed rezoning consistent with the future of Hillsborough Comprehensive Plan for unincorporated Hillsborough County.
All right. Thank you so much. Is there anyone that would like to testify in support or against this application? Seeing no one. County staff, anything further? Oh, I'm sorry. Did you want to testify in support or in opposition? Okay, if you could come forward, please. Anyone else that would like to say anything? Okay. Go ahead, and you can start by giving us your name and address, please.
Oops, got this down.
That's okay.
Hi, my name is Denise Travers, and I live at 5815 Whippoorwill Drive. I live in the house that is adjacent to this property, and I have with me other neighbors that are adjacent, Mr. Ross and Mr. Elshire, and the other people that are on the back of the property, the Carrion, they live in Michigan, so they aren't able to be here. Half Moon Lake and Whippoorwill Drive are a unique Florida neighborhood, and it's full of very diverse homes on large lots set away from the road and property lines. Sorry. Thank you. It's a 2-block long street with low lighting at night, no street lights, no sidewalks, and you can see the stars. This property backs up Rocky Creek, a unique wildlife corridor from Pasco County through to the Upper Tampa Bay. Rocky Creek and the surrounding wetlands provide a habitat for native Florida animals, birds, and plants. With this change to have 2 houses on what was one, worried about an increase in traffic. When you only have 13 houses on your street and you add another house, and both of those houses having 4 bedrooms, it could get busy. And it's very quiet where we live. We are very worried about the septic systems. Right there at Rocky Creek, even if you have a brand new septic system, if we had a weather event, a hurricane or extended tropical storms, those septic systems are at risk, and it's very low right behind there. So that's a real concern that we have. And all over the county, development is pressing on these wetlands, and those animals need a place to go, and we like to have that place for them in our neighborhood. We like all of our creatures. The additional well is also a concern. In our neighborhood, when we had a drought about 18 years ago, many of our wells went dry. We had to get a new well, but some of our neighbors didn't get a new well at that time, and this is a different time. So adding more wells and more people living in those houses present a challenge to the existing neighbors. The tree removal. The neighborhood is characterized by these beautiful towering pine trees. Virtually every lot has a number of pine trees, and it really makes the character of our unique neighborhood. They've already cut down most of the trees on the lot, but all of the pine trees on the lot at this point are marked for removal. I believe there's 7 more they're going to remove. And the houses that they have, while they're beautiful homes, they're placed 10 feet from the lot line. And while that's common in many of the neighborhoods in Hillsborough County, it's not common in our neighborhood. Most houses are set away from the lot lines and away from the street. We welcome our new neighbors, but ask that in order to preserve the character and lifestyle of our unique neighborhood, they only build 1 house, dig 1 well, consider placing the septic system farther away from the wetlands, and preserve the beautiful trees.
Could you give me your address one more time?
5815 Whippoorwill Drive. I
Okay.
can spell that if you want me to.
No, I have it, and the
Okay.
reason I ask is that the applicant submitted a list of adjacent properties and their lot sizes as a comparison.
Right.
He's asking for a half-acre lot, and he actually lists your
Right.
address as being a half-acre.
That's true.
Okay. All right, perfect. Thank you so much.
All right, thank you.
Is there anyone else that would like to speak in opposition? Sir, are you coming up? No, okay, all right, perfect. Then, county staff, anything further?
Nothing further, but I would, again, remind the folks who spoke that Ms. Medrano is available in the back if they have any questions regarding the oral argument process and the filing for oral argument.
That's a good point. Yes, if anybody would like to speak at the Board of County Commissioners, I would see Ms. Medrano in the back, and she can help you navigate the forms and the deadlines that required to make that happen. So, sir, if you'd like to come up during the rebuttal.
Can I use the...
Absolutely. There's a microphone there with a switch on the side.
Should I need to turn this on?
Well, they should, there it is, I see it. If you could just turn it so
Can you
it's,
see it?
yeah,
Towards you?
that's fine.
Okay, I just want to say that if we need to make arrangement to move the septic closer to the street and the walls to the back, and that is going to help with the environmental protection agency, or we can do that. We can minimize the cutting trees. For example, we can move the houses back to the back, and we can put the septics up front and the wells in the back. That's gonna, I think, help a lot on what she was asking for. Other than that, again, we are more than 75 feet. As you can see, 80 feet, 113 feet, 88 feet from the from well to well or from any adjacent properties. And so that's, the best I can say. Plus, the houses are not going to be 10 feet from the property line. Actually, they see it at 25 feet. That line right there is just a setback for the new zoning, but the houses are going to sit like 35 or 40 feet from the property line. So if that's going to help on your decision.
Okay.
Thank you very
All
much.
right, thank you for your time, I appreciate it. We'll close rezoning 18-1344 and go to the next case.
The next item is agenda item E1, rezoning application 18-0568. The applicant is Tampa Civil Design LLC. The request is to rezone some CG to planned development. Michelle Heinrich will provide staff recommendation after presentation by the applicant.
Good evening.
Good evening again, Ms. Finch. I'm Steve Allison, representing petitioner. This is not a terribly high-profile zoning case, but it's a very important one to our clients. Their livelihood largely rests on the outcome of this case. Our clients are not fluent in English. They're also not fluent or well-versed in planning theory or zoning regulations, to say the least. They operate a small business of select commercial vehicle sales. A significant portion of their business involves international sales, and they selected this site specifically because of its relative proximity to the Port of Tampa. It's two traffic signals away. I'm going to go to Elmo for the original application included the entire 4.2 acre parcel that's under common ownership. We requested, as you notice, the bottom half is zone CG, top half is C9, RSC9. We requested CG uses over the entire site and a flex to allow the commercial vehicle sales over the southern 500 feet of the site. The site plan at that time provided several access points along Causeway, 2 along 72nd Street, and then cross access between the two parcels. There was also at that time an existing food truck, sort of between a food truck and a restaurant that was situated in the setback area along 72nd Street. Well, as was understandable, staff was not particularly enamored with the thought of that kind of encroachment into a residential area from a relatively established area of commercial and residential zoning. So we amended the request and limited the CI use to the existing CG portion of the site. And for the north half of the parcel, we limited uses to either BPO or to Res 9 or RSC 9 as it's currently zoned. We thought that that addressed a lot of the conditions that had been, or a lot of the concerns that had been raised by staff in terms of transitions in land uses and the interrelationships between the use of this parcel and adjoining residential parcels in 3 directions. It turns out it didn't satisfy staff, and so we amended once again to where we are tonight, which is a zoning request only for the site that's currently zoned CG, and we continue to request, of course, the flex to allow the CI use, the single CI use onto that site, down to a I'm sorry, I'm fumbling through too many papers here. It's down to a single curb cut off of Causeway. This part's taken out of the rezoning altogether, would remain RSC 9, no access in any other direction. So we all through, we've given offers to staff for further restrictions on CG uses, further restrictions on development standards, particularly building height, if that was a concern. Full compliance with all LDC regulations, and basically enhanced buffering where need be, but none of it resonated with staff. In terms of the character of the area, this is out of the county staff report. It's a very nice map. I guess you can read it different ways. All of the black dots indicate intensive commercial uses. Obviously, as you move further from the site, you find those in greater frequency. But certainly even, and of course the site is only half that size now, but even proximate to this, to the site itself, you've got a couple that are essentially across the street. You've got PD uses, those aren't marked as CI, but those two PDs also allow CI uses. And when you drive the Causeway corridor, and I drove it again just this afternoon to refresh my memory, I see absolutely no distinction between the northern and southern portions of the roadway. But the southern portion is designated OC 20. The northern side is designated Res 9. I don't understand why that distinction was made some time ago. That designation issue is, I think, really the biggest flaw in this whole process, and I'll address it more in my concluding remarks. The staff reports themselves, a county report I thought was very well done. Respectfully disagree with their conclusions, obviously. The Planning Commission report actually contains multiple errors of fact. The report makes numerous references to the location criteria and notes that the site does not meet them. In fact, the location criteria are not applicable. The criteria applicable to request or to evaluate compliance with location criteria, you have to be requesting a neighborhood serving commercial use. By definition, a CI use is not a neighborhood serving commercial use. So even if we met nodal requirements that would allow consideration, say further to the west at Maydell, we still couldn't justify it on the basis of location criteria, whether we met it or not, whether we said it was within the nodal area or requesting a waiver from it. The only way you can have a CI use considered in a residential plan category is if it happens to lie adjacent to a more intensive comp plan category that allows consideration of the flex. It's not like there's a smorgasbord and we'll choose location criteria here, but maybe we'll choose a flex here. They have entirely different purposes. And the one that is salient to this particular petition is evaluation of the flex criteria. And to their credit, Planning Commission also evaluated that. But there are multiple references to the location criteria which have nothing to do with this request. In addition, the report also cites policies intended to discourage strip commercial development. Again, these are totally irrelevant. The site is already zoned CG. You can't say that this is going to produce CG because if it's denied, you still have CG. And in fact, because it's a planned development, the argument can be made that, at least in theory, under the existing CG zoning, he could subdivide and have multiple curb cuts. You know, the effort to avoid strip commercial is in large part due to traffic control concerns. You get that control by way of this and the use that he's requesting. It also must be noted, and I don't know if you've driven the site yet, in addition to not being able to distinguish the north and south sides of Causeway Boulevard, there's a heck of a lot of non-conforming uses out there. There are more CI uses than indicated on the county map. And I understand legally that's not a basis, but in terms of forming the character of the neighborhood, it's pretty hard to ignore that that's a major contributing component to the community character. So to accept the recommendations of both staffs, somehow his selling a few trucks is supposed to lead to the demise of the neighborhood. In fact, we've communicated with the neighbors. The single concern they've expressed to us is they don't want low-income or affordable housing to locate in the RSC 9 portion of it. They actually appreciate the maintenance that our clients has provided. It's not a pretty site, but he is gradually making upgrades over time. As we have amended it through this process, the development poses no substantive negative impacts to the residential neighborhood further north. We're oriented in the opposite direction. We face Causeway. They face totally different directions. We don't share a single street. You can't access that neighborhood from any street adjacent to our property. You have to go to another location. So there's not even shared traffic between the residential areas and this particular site. Buffering and screening will fully comply with the LDC. There are no issues with bulk, mass, height, noise, odor, lighting, or hours of operation, things that we commonly look at to determine compatibility. None of those issues exist. And although this is deemed by code to be a CI use, I'm almost done. Staff has provided no documentation of alleged adverse impacts. getting back to another point, the principal culprit of this entire battle, in my opinion, was the errant decision some nearly 20 years ago to designate the south half as OC 20 and the north half as Res 9. That made no sense then. There was already in place intensive commercial uses up and down the north side of Causeway. I have no idea why they did that, why they couldn't have at least considered a mixed use. This isn't the forum to discuss comp plan changes, but it is a forum where folks can find relief from some requirements that may not, as applied to their particular situation, make a heck of a lot of sense.
Let me ask you, if I could interrupt, let me ask you just to kind of wind this up, we are out of time. Is it accurate to say that the existing uses, with the exception of the sale of the commercial vehicles, are all permitted under the CG zoning district?
The existing uses
The
on the
existing
site?
uses on the site today, with the exception of the commercial vehicle sales.
That's my understanding. The only things there are commercial and domestic vehicle sales.
Right, and there was a food truck,
There
I
was a
understand.
food truck, that was, and I'm sorry I missed that somewhere in my presentation. That was removed
Oh,
by
I see.
the applicant.
Okay, so
Unfortunately, in my
they were
opinion,
cited for essentially
improper uses.
and that is the commercial vehicles,
Right.
which prompts the request for the flex to
Jeremy
recognize that
might know
use.
more.
If you could, Mr. Couch, if you could wrap it up, we are way past time.
Yes, Ms. Finch. Jeremy Couch, 17937 Huntingville Circle, Suite 102, Tampa Civil. Yes, the applicant started work on the property. They opened up a business. They didn't realize that there's even zoning and zoning codes. They just saw commercial property. They were in violation for the food truck because they took the wheels off. It was a hot spot, but they're trying to comply. They removed it to make staff happy. That's during the construction plan review that's kind of paralleling this. The only non-conforming use they have right now is the commercial vehicles.
Okay, understood. All right, thank you so much.
I have conditions, proposed conditions.
Yeah, you can
put
submit them into the record, absolutely. All right, development services, please. Thank you. Good evening.
Good evening, Development Services, Michelle Heinrich. This is a rezoning for 2.26 acres from CG to PD to allow for CG uses. And the one use which you heard the applicant's request tonight, which is the sale of new or used commercial vehicles and trucks. Currently, that is only permitted in the CIM and some of our SPI AP zoning districts. As you saw on the maps, the site is located on the north side of Causeway Boulevard, and it's currently in the Res 9 future land use category. As part of this application, the applicant is requesting a flex of the OC 20 future land use category found to the south. And I'll also just note, while I do believe currently, right now, they do just have the sales lot. When I visited the site, and I think which they were also in code enforcement for, was for open storage. They were storing semi-truck trailers, domestic vehicles, commercial vehicles on the back part of the property. But as Mr. Couch said, I think they've been working to resolve that. The project does propose commercial development standards. However, it does need a PD variation to the required 20-foot buffer with type B screening that is required along the west where it's adjacent to residential zoning. At the time of filing our report, we have not received any variation responses from the applicant. So that is an area where they do need a PD variation where it's not complying with the LDC.
As of today, you still have not received it?
No, ma'am.
Okay.
Staff's review of the area finds that the area is developed with residential and non-residential uses. The intensity of the commercial uses along Causeway Boulevard does vary in accordance with the future land use and the presence of adjacent single-family residential. You saw put up on the Elmo by Mr. Allison, figure 2 of our staff report does note the intensity of the commercial uses along both sides, the north and south of Causeway Boulevard. The area east of Maydell Drive on the north side of Causeway Boulevard is adjacent to existing single-family residential homes and is within the Res 9 future land use category. This allows primarily commercial uses of appropriate intensity that are not expected to impact the adjacent residential uses with incompatible operations or characteristics. Within this area, staff has noted that 2 approved PDs that allow CI uses are present, and those are noted in our report. However, as we also noted, they are older PDs. They're located westward from the site, closer to Maydell Drive, and are not in immediate proximity to existing single-family residential development. One of the PDs recognizes a CI zoning that's been in place in the property since 1972. One CI zoning, which is noted in there to the west of the property, it was approved over 15 years ago and is a quarter of the size of this site. That's about a half acre. This is 2.26 acres. The area west of Maydell is both historically and currently a more intense portion of the corridor, allowing more intense commercial uses that operate in proximity to the rail line and to the port. And that area is in the OC and LI future land use categories. The southern side of Causeway Boulevard in the vicinity of the site is located in the OC future land use category, which as different. And as I know Mr. Allison noted, I just personally, from looking at the existing development of the area and previous zoning maps of the area, I believe probably the OC was placed on the southern area as opposed to the north because of the existing single-family residential that is immediately adjacent to the corridor in this area. And it is different further westward because of the difference in residential zoning. As our staff report notes, CI zonings are located to the south. However, all of them have been restricted to prohibit open storage and the display of commercial vehicles and trucks. And as you heard from the applicant, and we also acknowledge there are numerous nonconformities in this area. However, we do not see that as a justification to allow it to occur elsewhere in the property where it's currently not permitted. More immediate to the site, the property is bordered by commercial and residential uses to the north, west, and east. RSC 9 zoning exists to the north of the rezoning site. A pharmacy and medical clinic is located to the west, as are 4 residential parcels, which are located along 72nd Street and oriented towards the site. An air conditioning and heating contractor is located to the east, as well as RSC 9 zoning to the northeast. Our analysis finds that this portion of Causeway Boulevard, the corridor, serves as a transition from the intense commercial and industrial areas around the Causeway Boulevard 50th Street area to the residential suburban area eastwards, more towards 301 and I-75. Therefore, we do not recommend approval of this application, and we feel it would set a precedent for future rezonings on the north side of the road.
All right, thank you so much. Planning Commission, please.
Melissa Leinhardt, Planning Commission staff. The subject property is located within the Residential 9 Future Land Use category. It is within the limits of the Greater Palm River Community Plan, and it's in the urban service area. The intent of the Residential 9 Future Land Use category is to designate areas that are suitable for low to medium density residential development, as well as urban scale neighborhood commercial, office, and mixed use development. The subject site does not meet commercial locational criteria, and therefore a waiver to the criteria is required per policy 22.8 of the future land use element. The applicant has not submitted a waiver request, indicating that the flex request from the Office Commercial 20 future land use category located to the south per future land use element policy 7.3 has been submitted in lieu of a waiver to commercial locational criteria. This flex request from the OC 20 future land use category to the south is not supported because there are compatibility concerns regarding the proposed uses on the north side of Causeway Boulevard, where the predominant development pattern would not support a CI use such as open storage. The subject property is surrounded by single-family residential zoning and land uses to the west, north, and east. The flex request to OC 20 is also not supported because it would allow consideration of uses, densities, and intensities that are not compatible with adjacent single-family uses. For instance, OC 20 would allow consideration of the proposed commercial intensive use of sales of new or used commercial vehicles, which would not be compatible with these adjacent residential uses. Policy 7.4 specifically states the criteria for the consideration of a flex, one of which states that the flex must be compatible with the surrounding land uses, their density and intensity. The community design component of the comprehensive plan also contains policy direction about designing developments that relate to the predominant character of the surroundings. It further states that new developments should recognize the existing community and be designed in a way that is compatible with the established character of the area. Because the surrounding land use pattern to the northwest and east is mostly single-family residential, a zoning request that includes a commercial intensive use would not be compatible with the existing development pattern located to those directions of the subject property. The request is also not consistent with the Greater Palm River Community Plan, specifically Goal 5A under the Planning and Growth Economic Development Strategy promotes opportunities for compatible, well-designed business growth and jobs. The proposed plan development would allow an intensive use not permitted by the subject property's current zoning of commercial general. Introducing a commercial intensive use on this site would not be compatible with the adjacent single-family residential development and would therefore not be consistent with the Greater Palm River Community Plan. The community plan also includes a graphic outlining the community's vision for commercial nodes. The community would like to see neighborhood commercial uses near the intersections of Causeway Boulevard and Maydale Drive, Palm River Road and Maydale Drive, as well as Progress Boulevard, Madison Avenue, and 78th Street. I should add that has been interpreted, the neighborhood commercial, as non-residential uses. The applicant's proposal to introduce a more intensive non-residential use outside a commercial node would not be consistent with the Greater Palm River Community Plan. And based upon those considerations, Planning Commission staff finds the proposed plan development inconsistent with the future of Hillsborough Comprehensive Plan for unincorporated Hillsborough County.
Can you further address Mr. Allison's assertion that commercial locational criteria does not apply to this request?
Yes, ma'am. It would not apply to the CI use that is proposed, but this is a new request, so we would need a waiver for the CG request.
Because they are asking for all uses under CG.
Yes.
And that is subject to locational criteria.
Yes, CG uses and CN uses fall into the commercial locational criteria.
Understood. All right. Thank you so much.
Thank
We'll call for anyone that would like to speak in favor of the application. Anyone in support? Seeing no one, anyone in opposition? Yes, sir. While he's coming up, anyone else that would like to speak in opposition? Okay. Good evening. If you could start by giving us your name and address.
My name is Dean James. My address is 1012 Sonata Lane, Apollo Beach.
Thank you.
I'm in opposition to this. I own property directly across the street. I might note that this is the fourth date for this hearing, and if there's other people, maybe that's why there aren't other people here opposed to it, because they're tired of coming down here. I bought my property 13 years ago, and there was a single house on that property. I'd like to also point out that when we say that there's trucks there, we're not talking about pickup trucks. We're talking about 18-wheelers and also gas trucks too, gasoline trucks. Now, the big ones carry gasoline, they're there too. So it was noted that they want to put a curb cut on Causeway Boulevard, and they want to put two on 70th Street. FDOT decides where the curb cuts go. They don't decide where the curb cuts go. And that area also is a part of the economic development department. Has a pilot program for that area for development, and they give financial consideration for certain development for infrastructure and some building. And the purpose of it is to eliminate blight in that area. So we don't want more blight in that area. I had other things to say, but they've changed all this zoning now, so now I guess they want commercial intensive, and I'm against that. I think the CG is the right zoning for that property.
All right, thank you, sir, for coming down. If you could please sign in with the clerk's office. All right, we'll close opposition testimony, go back to county staff. Anything further?
I have one clarification, but again, before that, I'll again a note for the record that their staff is available, Ms. Medrano, to assist if any questions regarding filing a oral argument, if citizens are interested in speaking before the Board of County Commissioners at the subsequent land use meeting. Just one clarification for the applicant when they get back up, because I think this goes towards, in our staff report, the issue regarding the variations to the buffering and screening. The issue is along the western boundary. That right-of-way is less than 40 feet. Therefore, per code, since the right-of-way is less than 50 feet, the adjacent residential that's in the area further north is considered adjacent to the property and therefore subject to the buffering and screening requirements of the code. The applicant's proposed conditions reference that they would comply with all buffering and screening requirements. So if the intent is to comply, then I think they need to clarify that's the intent, because then along that western boundary where it's applicable based on adjacent zoning, buffering and screening in accordance with the code would be required. And I think it would also require them, as this moves forward to the board, the site plan they submit for certification would need to be amended to show compliant buffering and screening in that area.
Understood. Okay. All right, we'll go back to the applicant for rebuttal. You have 5 minutes.
For the record again, Steve Allison. Mr. Grady is exactly right. The reason we submitted the conditions as written, Michelle had brought up the issue of the substandard right-of-way at a late meeting we had. Instead of seeking variations, we specifically wrote into the conditions that we would comply with all buffer and screening requirements.
All right, fair enough.
The location criteria, I'm going to stand by my remarks. We are not requesting CG uses. CG exists on the site. You don't do a rezoning to request CG on a CG's own site. So that, to me, doesn't make any sense. The relative to impacts, part of the comments indicated concern with impacts to residential neighborhoods. I want to go down, we'll just briefly roll. Indeed, when the entire parcel was included as part of the rezoning, obviously the impact to those residential uses was an absolutely valid concern. Whether or not for BPO that was a good transition, and with only internal access and buffering and screening, whether that was a bad thing, is a moot point now. But for the zoning as it exists and is presented to you tonight, here's our borders with residential, right there and right here. It's not like we're having an impact on this neighborhood. This is not a through street. This street dead ends in this area generally. So to get to this neighborhood, you go over to this street. So there's not even a traffic interrelationship between the two uses. Relative to the Palm River plan, the language that was put into my planning analysis was copied verbatim from another Planning Commission staff report that recommended a flex. I'm not saying they're the same situation, but the policy cited as supporting that flex on Causeway Boulevard, I think apply equally to this rezoning. There's also in our, or in my planning analysis, reference to economic development policies for heavy commercial uses. Those were not cited in the Planning Commission report, but I think are salient to this particular use. This is a port-dependent use. It's a solid economic interest. The gentleman that owns the property across the street, very much respect his comments. He indicated that when he purchased his property that there was a single-family house on this site. I think when you go to the site, you will see that that was not an appropriate use on Causeway Boulevard. And unless you have further questions.
I don't at this time, but thank you
Thank
so
you.
much. Then we will close rezoning 18-0568. It's 8:10 by my read of the back of the clock, so let's take a short 5-minute break. If you could come back at the clock on the back of the wall, says 8:15, and we'll finish the hearing. Thank you so much. All right, if we could please head back to our seats, and we will start the remainder of the hearing. Mr. Grady, if you could call the next case.
The next agenda item is E2, rezoning application 18-0941. The applicant is TSP Companies Incorporated. The request is to rezone from AI to a planned development. Kara Woods will provide staff recommendation after presentation by the applicant.
Good evening.
Good evening. My name is David Wright, Vice President of TSP Companies. I'm an authorized agent and have not been sworn in.
Okay, is there anyone, this case or the remainder of the agenda, if you plan to speak tonight and you have not been sworn in, please stand, raise your right hand, and I'll swear you in. Do you solemnly swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Thank you. Please continue.
Our address is P.O. Box 1016, Tampa, Florida 33601. And we're going to have an exhibit on the Elmo for this next part of the presentation. I'm presenting a request to rezone a 9.46 acre property from agricultural industrial to planned development. Leisure Pools is one of the largest manufacturers of fiberglass composite pools and is proposing to construct a sales center on the subject property, which has frontage on Interstate 4 with vehicular access from Newsom Road, approximately 1/10 of a mile east of McIntosh Road. The property is bounded by Interstate 4 to the north, the Strawberry Crest High School wetland mitigation area to the east, commercial and agricultural zoned property across Newsom Road to the south, and commercial zone properties to the west. The subject property is ideal for the proposed use due to its Interstate 4 frontage, but is challenged due to the relatively large and irregularly shaped forested wetland consisting of 3.15 acres, which is centrally located on the subject property and significantly constrains development of the site below the allowable floor area ratio within the SMU 6 comprehensive plan category. In order to minimize wetland impacts by the proposed development, a variance to allow encroachments into the 30-foot wetland conservation area setback was submitted and subsequently approved by you on October 8th of this year. It is also noted that the proposed removal of significant nuisance vegetation, compensation plantings, and rehydration of the existing wetland are all considered enhancements to the wetland. The variance application is VAR 18-1225, and I'll submit a copy of the Lujo decision into the record. Referring to the PD general site plan, the leisure pool showroom, offices, warehouse, in-ground display pools, and associated parking are proposed to be located on the north edge of the subject property along the Interstate 4 frontage. Those improvements are proposed to be limited to 10,000 square feet of gross floor area for a retail pool showroom and offices, and 3,000 square feet of gross floor area for warehouse. An open storage area is proposed on the southeast quadrant of the site that will be utilized to store fiberglass pools stacked to a height no greater than 10 feet. This area will be limited to pool storage only, and the area is proposed to be screened by a solid PVC or wooden fence at least 6 feet in height, or evergreen shrubs, which at the time of installation shall be 6 feet in height and 75% opaque. A 10-foot type A buffer and screening will also be provided along the east property line adjacent to the Strawberry Crest High School property. No variations to land development code are being requested. The site does not meet locational criteria as outlined in the future land use element of the comprehensive plan. Therefore, a waiver to locational criteria has been requested. We agreed to the appropriate buffering and screening between the school to the east and the proposed development, consistent with the future land use element, objective 14-2 of the community design component, which encourages integration of commercial development into rural settings that will enhance the quality of the rural environment and provide appropriately scaled local serving goods and services and small-scaled employment. Planning Commission staff recommends that the waiver to locational criteria be granted. Development Services staff has recommended approval of the request subject to conditions of approval, and we are in agreement with those conditions. Planning Commission staff has found the request consistent with the comprehensive plan. We noticed the surrounding properties and neighbors. I received one phone call from the franchisee of the 7-Eleven located at the corner of Newsom Road and McIntosh Road. He expressed his support for the proposed development, and we were not contacted by any other citizens. Based on the submitted documentation and my testimony today, I respectfully request your recommendation of approval, and I'm here to answer any questions.
I don't have any this time, but thank you so much. Development Services.
Kara Woods, Development Services. As the applicant stated, they're proposing conditions for a 10,000 square foot, 2-story showroom and a 3,000 square foot, 1-story warehouse, and additionally open storage for storing pool shells. The application was previously continued in order to seek a variance to encroach in the wetland setback, And as the applicant stated, variance 18-1225 was approved. In accordance with the Land Development Code requirement, a 10-foot Type A buffer and screening is going to be provided between the project and Strawberry Crest High School. Additionally, the open storage area will be screened where it is in view from Newsom Road, and that's in accordance with LDC 60606C7. That requires screening consisting of solid masonry walls, solid PVC fences, or solid wooden fences at least 6 feet in height, or evergreen shrubs, which at the time of installation must be 6 feet in height and 75% opaque. No objections were received from reviewing agencies, and staff is recommending approval, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
I don't have any, but thank you. Planning Commission.
Melissa Leinhardt, Planning Commission staff. The subject property is located within the suburban mixed-use 6 future land use category. It is in the rural area, and the site is not located within the limits of a community plan. The eastern portion of the site abuts Strawberry Crest High School, and the wetland on the site will provide a natural buffer to the school along the northeastern portion of the site. Additionally, the applicant is providing a 6-foot fence along the eastern portion of the site to mitigate any impacts to the surrounding development consistent with policy direction regarding compatibility. Non-residential land uses are intended to be located based on locational criteria as outlined in the future land use element. In this case, the site does not meet commercial locational criteria as it's located more than 1,000 feet from a qualifying intersection. A waiver has been requested. The proposed plan development is consistent with future land use element objective 14-2 of the community design component, which encourages integration of commercial developments into rural settings that will enhance the quality of the rural environment and provide appropriately scaled local serving goods and services and small-scaled employment. Planning Commission staff recommends that the waiver to locational criteria be granted. Based upon those considerations, Planning Commission staff finds the proposed plan development consistent with the future of Hillsborough Comprehensive Plan for unincorporated Hillsborough County, subject to the conditions proposed by Development Services.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
At this time, we'll call for anyone that would like to speak in support or in opposition to the application. Seeing no one, county staff, anything further? Mr. Wright, anything further? All right, then with that, we'll close rezoning 18-0941 and go to the next case.
The next item is agenda item E3, rezoning application 18-0996, the applicant Street Front Commercial Properties LLC. The request is to rezone from AS1, ASC1, RSC2, MH, and RSC3 to a planned development. Marshall Robinson will provide staff recommendation after presentation by the applicant.
It's time for the applicant presentation. Good evening.
Thank you very much. Ron Weaver for Winnies Jackson Street. I'm here with Steve Stone, Streetfront Properties, the developer of about 12.5 gross acres in the northeast corner of Simmons Loop in Big Bend in the middle of South County. Peter Pensa, our planner, is here. Jane Caldera, our transportation engineer. Charlie Potter, our engineer. In this northeast quadrant of Simmons Loop and Big Bend, we are seeking a planned development in the UMU-20, one of the most intense categories in your entire comprehensive plan. This is classic urban infill between 301 and I-75, the beneficiary in 2021 of a 6-laning of Big Bend and a new diamond interchange to be completed by 2024. And Jane Caldera will discuss traffic with you in a moment. To the east of us is HCA's approval of about 360,000 square feet of hospital and 240,000 square feet of medical office. We're only seeking 26,000 square feet of retail and about 100,000 square feet of hotel. UMU-20, as you know, requires 2 uses. Our second use beyond retail will be hotel or office or civic with respect to the UMU requirement for 2 uses. One of the legal issues is that we are seeking 2 waivers. Mr. Pensa, our planner, will present one of those waivers regarding buffers. The other waiver is from 6.01.01 of your code, which provides that you shall have a setback of one additional of extra feet with respect to height over 20 feet. We'd like a waiver of that additional setback with regard to height above 20 feet because the hotel, about 130 rooms, and our mixed use is going to need to be about 60 feet. We are fortunately going to be able to reopen what is now the closed portion of Old Big Bend Road just north, of course, of Big Bend. We're going to be able to reopen that, and we're going to have a safe setback about 385 feet required by county staff in order to create a snaking effect for Big Bend in order for Simmons Loop and Big Bend to link up together with a safe 385-foot distance back, rather than the current 75-foot separation between Big Bend and Old Big Bend, which required a couple of years ago the closing of that. If we reopen, as we will with our development, and for which we understand there's no money available at the county except our building it as a part of our project, if we are able to reopen Simmons Loop, we will be able to create with that 385-foot separation of the new Old Big Bend with that curvature, like at the islands, we'll be able to relieve congestion of Lincoln about 1,800 feet to our east and relieve congestion of Eisenhower by the two schools about a mile to our west. Jane Caldera will speak to our safety and our other issues. We would respectfully request your approval of this urban infill, classic urban infill, in one of your highest comprehensive plan categories of UMU 20. Mr. Pensa, our plan. Mr. Pensa.
Good evening.
Good evening. For the record, my name is Peter Pensa. I'm an AICP certified planner with Avid Engineering. We're the planners and engineers on the project. Office address is 2300 Curlew Road, Palm Harbor, Florida. The property, as Mr. Weaver pointed out, is UMU 20, future land use. The site is comprised of 4 parcels that are located right here. It's these 4. This is the intersection of Big Bend Road, Old Big Bend Road, which is a parallel, essentially a frontage road now the way it's built, and Simmons Loop to the south. This is the closed intersection that Mr. Weaver talked about. The whole corridor, basically pretty much all the way from US 41 to the west to 301 to the east, is for the most part all high intensity uses, the majority of it being UMU 20. There are a few other intense designations such as community mixed use 12, mostly to the west of the interstate, and OC 20 going east to 301. The area all along this segment of the corridor is all UMU 20 except for the YMCA and Vance Vogel Park, which are county facilities. They're public, quasi-public land use. And then west of the interstate is the County Public Works Complex, East Bay High School, and preserved land to the north of that. To the southwest are 2 large DRIs. Over here on this on the southwest corner of the intersection where our property is located is a commercial PUD that was approved about 2 years ago. To the south of that is a multifamily PD. To the southeast corner is St. Joseph's Hospital, which is another large PUD. And the property that abuts us across the Simmons Road right away is Hospital Corporation of America, HCA, who has a approval for hospital and medical office use. We've been working on the project, Avid and the developer, Streetfront Properties, who has the contract to purchase and develop the property, for about 2 years. We've been working closely with county staff to rezone the property to do a public-private partnership with the county and HCA to realign Old Big Bend. Currently, it's immediately adjacent to Big Bend Road. The separation is not safe, and as such, the county had closed down that intersection, the north leg of the intersection, several years ago to avoid the conflicts with such a short stacking distance. When we went in and met with the county, we had a proposal for an alignment that the county didn't particularly like, to be honest with you. And over time, we've worked on numerous reiterations, came to agreement on where that alignment would be. HCA, as the owner and their engineer, have been working hand in hand with us on that because they will be continuing that alignment east through their property as well. They are in the process of doing a PRS that'll be going to the county commission at the same time as ours for consideration by the county to amend theirs for consistency with our request.
That was one of my questions, is whether, when it gets past your property, what happens? So
Yes.
they're amending their plan to accommodate that realignment?
That's correct.
Okay.
Yeah, we've been working together. Their engineer is actually here in the audience tonight. As Mr. Weir pointed out, it is a mixed-use development. It is compatible and consistent with the UMU 20 land use. The developer plans on doing commercial and hotel uses on the property. It, as you can see on the PD plan, has for both vehicular and pedestrian integration as shown on the plan and in the conditions that staff had presented. The right-of-way approximately here is where Bullfrog Creek crosses. There's a bridge through there. Shortly after the bridge, we will begin the realignment to come up through the undeveloped county park property, through the middle of the property where it spans the property lines between the four owners, and over to a proposed intersection. It'll continue to the north to provide future access to the county park, as well as stubbing out the intersection for when HCA develops their property, and then south to the intersection with numerous improvements that Jane Caldera will cover when she comes up. There are two waivers that we've asked for. One is the height to building, the building height setback requirements under 6.01.01, which we were talked about and we provided a justification for, and staff has recommended approval of that as well. And then also we've requested a waiver from 6.0600 from the north property boundary here and the western property boundary here. This is the area that abuts the county park property, to waive the buffer and screening requirements there. Again, we provide a justification for it. Staff recommends approval as part of working with the county on the partnership for the road project. We're, besides being compatible and not needing that use because there's no residential or anything incompatible to any of those concerns with it, we're also working with the county on how we'll be addressing that transition from our property to the county park property.
I was going to ask you about that. In the county staff report, it cites it as a variation for two requests for a variation. One was the one you mentioned between the buffering on the north and the west, but it also cites a variation request regarding the vehicular use areas being screened between each other.
Yes.
I didn't. The reason I bring it up, I can read the request, but I didn't see your response form in the record, and I looked through the county. Maybe it's there and I missed it. But so you're saying you did submit the variation response form into the record?
Yes.
Okay.
We're requesting a waiver of the internal buffering between the parcels if they are subdivided. Obviously, if it's developed and maintained under single ownership or as leased parcels, then there wouldn't be any buffers required by code. If they do subdivide, we're asking to waive that since it is a mixed-use project and we're promoting denser development as well as integration between the uses for, like I said, vehicular use as well as pedestrian interconnectivity between the uses.
Okay, understood.
Okay. I think unless you have any questions for me, I'm going to have Jane Caldera, who's the traffic engineer, come up on the project.
No, those were my questions for you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Good evening.
Good evening, Ms. Finch. For the record, my name is Jane Caldera. I'm a professional engineer specializing in traffic engineering. And are we okay on time? I have about 3 minutes.
There's 4 minutes left.
Okay. So I've been working with staff for over a year, Public Works staff, which you'll hear a brief presentation from tonight. James Ratliff is here to do that. But just to give you a little bit of history, since we gotten with county staff, the real key to this was, could we shift Old Big Bend Road far enough north to still make the project developable for the developer, meet the safety and operational needs of the county, and alleviate these problems that have been created because of the closure of the north leg of Simmons Loop Road. So we took a lot of time and we very carefully planned, what would the traffic look like here if this gets reopened? How far up would the new intersection be so that we have proper stacking for the traffic signal? The plan as you see it in the conditions of approval proposed that the separation be 385 feet. Now that was based on the build out of this project, which it will be limited to a certain amount of trips in the AM. I think it's about 881 in the AM and 760 something in the PM. So that's what our traffic study was based on. So that's what will be held to, the maximum number of trips on this PD. Now, in addition to that, there was 8 other background projects that we considered that would impact this intersection. 2 PDs to the north that are basically 50% built out, residential projects up on Bullfrog. The large 30-acre approved PD for HCA that is being amended to modify their access location, but we took their build-out trips from what their PD approves them for. And then on the south side of the road, there was a recently approved 7-acre mixed-use commercial. We took all of their trips, added them in the intersection. There were 3 more projects to the south on Simmons Loop that one day may connect up when Simmons Loop connects down to the new Apollo Beach connection through the Belmont PD. So there's 3 more residential PDs and then the Belmont PD, which is a large mixed use. So we spent a lot of time making sure we took all these other projects and got their build-out trips and assigned them to this intersection, along with background growth and some diversion based on reopening it, to come up with our traffic projections. So that got us to the 385 feet being the appropriate separation. As Ron Weaver said earlier, it was only 75 feet before. We're going to have 2 southbound left turn lanes. We'll have a through lane and exclusive right turn lane, as well as improvements on Big Bend Road for dual turn lanes, both northbound and southbound, based on the demand as the traffic develops. So we feel we spent a lot of time on that, staff, and the applicant or agreement. The traffic study has been approved. We agree with all the conditions. The other thing I wanted to mention is the corridor preservation plan still has Simmons Loop going north of Big Bend. So by reopening this and providing Simmons Loop, we'll be meeting the expectations of the corridor preservation plan for the extension north of Big Bend. We plan to build it up to our north property line and slightly past that to get future access to a county park. Now, as mentioned, the HCA PD that had been previously approved did not contemplate relocating Big Bend Road up, so their new plan coming in, which I believe is going to go simultaneous or the same date to the board, shows it aligning at the same location. And the HCA representative is here to confirm that is their intent. I think the last thing to mention is that this project is a good step to improving the safety and operations that have occurred since this intersection has been closed, and with the heavy volumes at Lincoln and the Eisenhower School. But what it also does is we've had DOT take a look at this and Hillsborough County to make sure that this is compatible with their future plans for the I-75 interchange improvements, and of course the 6-laning that is pending on Big Bend Road between Covington and here. So this project won't in any way replace that project, but it is compatible with it and won't interfere with the DOT plans. And if you have any questions.
I don't. How many more speakers do you have? Because that's it? Okay. So we will wrap the applicant presentation and go to development services. Thank you.
Good evening, Marshall Robinson, Development Services. The applicant is requesting to rezone 12.5 acres of property from AS1, ASC1, RSC2 with a mobile home overlay, and RSC3 to a planned development in order to develop a mix of commercial uses within the proposed PD. Currently, the subject property contains 3 single-family dwelling units, 1 mobile home unit, and vacant agricultural land. The subject property is located at the northwest corner of Simmons Road and Old Big Bend Road in Riverview. The subject property is located in the urban service area and has a future land use designation of UMU 20. The applicant is requesting the approval of CG uses and uses that are permitted conditional uses in the CG zoning district. The following uses will not be permitted. And there's a list of prohibitive uses in the staff report for your convenience to look at, Ms. Finch. The applicant is proposing a development that will provide at least 2 land uses within the development, where each land use will be developed and integrated within the site among at least one other land use. The proposed project will be limited to the maximum FAR allowed by the UMU 20 future land use designation of 1.0 and/or a cumulative development of uses not to exceed neither 818 a.m. peak hour trips nor 762 p.m. peak hour trips. Old Big Bend Road provides road frontage to the subject site along the proposed southern PD boundary. The county-owned right-of-way that contains the Old Big Bend Road frontage to the proposed PD is planned for vacation in order for this area to be developed as a part of the PD. The developer has offered to extend Simmons Loop Road to the north in order to provide access to the county park adjacent to the north of the subject property. The vacation of Old Big Bend Road right-of-way has resulted in Old Big Bend Road being realigned as shown on the proposed GDP. The realignment of Old Big Bend Road creates a north parcel and a south parcel within the proposed PD as shown on the submitted GDP. The newly realigned Old Big Bend Road is to align with the adjacent PD's planned access, which is the HCA Hospital to the east and is separated by Simmons Loop Road. HCA Hospital is approved for 360,000 square foot hospital with 250 beds and 240,000 square feet of medical offices. The HCA development, which has a PD number of 04-1820, has petitioned the county for a minor modification to the HCA PD in order to revise the Simmons Loop Road planned access location proposed on the general development plan. And for the record, the application number for the PRS is that is to be heard concurrent at the BOCC meeting December 11, 2018 is petition number PRS 18-1154. The applicant, as stated previously, has requested 2 PD variations to the site development requirements, one of which is found in Part 60600, which is the landscaping, irrigation, and buffering requirements. The variation request is to not have any screening or buffering of vehicle use areas between each of the proposed parcels within the PD. And the other variation to that section of the code is for no buffering being required along the north and west project boundaries, which are adjacent to an undeveloped and heavily wooded county park land that has folio number 77565.0000. The applicant has also requested a waiver to 60101 of the LDC. That waiver is to waive the requirement of additional building setbacks based on building height. The subject property, again, as stated, is in the UMU future land use designation, where they're proposing a mix of uses between commercial, office, cultural, institutional, and a motel-hotel use. For the purposes of this request, the hotel-motel will be recognized as a standalone separate use for the subject property that is located in the UMU 20 FLU. And the proposed PD boundary has county-owned land to the north and west, made up of the county park and floodplain areas. These areas provide a vast amount of buffering to the north and west boundaries. Big Bend Road is a commercial corridor where St. Joseph's Hospital is located to the south across Big Bend Road along Simmons Loop Road. And I believe that Mr. Penza's description of the surrounding properties helped accentuate some of the compatibility that exists in that UMU 20 future land use area. Also, James Ratliff is here from our Transportation Review section. I believe he's going to say a few words. For the record, staff has no objections and finds the proposed request approvable subject to the conditions of approval.
I just wanted to verify. So the square footage amounts are not cited. It's just an FAR with a maximum trips.
So Ms. Finch, the way, and James can probably elaborate on this a little bit. So there are 2 triggers in play here for the intensity to be measured on this project, one of which is the FAR at 1.0. The other is an and/or, which is the trip generation caps that are stated in the report, whichever happens first. Those calculations were derived from trips to square footage of uses that were came up with, I guess, between the applicant and our transportation staff. So it's basically a tracking mechanism for the construction review approval. So as each, if this thing were to get parceled up through development and subdivided, then each construction plan approval that would come through and receive approval, we would track those trips, and we would also track the FAR, and whichever one hit their cap first would subsequently be how the project would be completed in terms of intensity.
I was with you until you said either or, because in my mind it was the maximum was the 1.0 FAR.
So the idea is that technically they would never see the 1.0 FAR.
That's how it was in my mind.
Yes,
that
the
trip
idea
was some
would be
theoretical under the
But
FAR.
I don't want to speak in absolutes, because that's not to say a really creative project developer could come in and accomplish perhaps maybe the trip generation maximum while meeting the 1.0 FAR. Don't ask me how that could be achieved, because I don't know, but I don't want to speak in absolutes that couldn't happen. So the two triggers to measure the intensity, one is being driven by the trip generation, obviously, but just as a supplemented exercise to measure the intensity, the FAR did not want to be omitted from measuring the intensity by the UMU 20.
But there's no scenario in which they can exceed the maximum trips that are cited in the condition.
Correct.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Ratliff.
Good evening, James Ratliff, Development Services Transportation Review Section. Yeah, just to kind of follow up on that, for example, there are some trip generation codes such as hotel, where hotels are all different sizes, right? You might have one that has a very large amenity area, or you might have an economy hotel with a very small amenity area. The trips generated from those two based on ITE are going to read the same, but the FAR could change. And so, there is a situation where you could have some, difference in the size of certain types of uses that doesn't affect trip generation. And so that's where, we're looking at the trip generation as the absolute maximum. If you can get up to the 1.0, okay, as long as you're not violating that.
I understand that.
Right. And I do have two documents I'd like to submit into the record tonight, if I may. One is a series of 4 graphics that I'll go through with you, as well as a couple of revised conditions.
Thank you.
So this is just to give you a little bit of context. The first graphic I'll put up on the Elmo about essentially the project that we're talking about tonight, the relocation of the Old Big Bend frontage road, is part of a much larger connection, and that's a 2-lane connection between US 301 and I-75, and that's going to connect Paseo Almar on the south end all the way up to Kipsington Drive on the north end, and that utilizes a variety of existing and planned roadway segments. As you can see in the next graphic here, there are a variety of segments, including this one, which will be completed in the future as other developments occur. And the one we're focusing, of course, tonight is shown in that yellow box. And again, closure in 2013 of that existing Simmons Loop and Old Big Bend Road intersection, or rather Big Bend Road intersection, did divert additional trips to 2 nearby intersections that are substandard. And so we anticipate this to alleviate or to help reduce some of the trips that are currently having to go through those intersections, and we'll be able to go through this intersection, which will meet all relevant standards. This next graphic is to really kind of show you exactly what's planned a little bit further to the east. As you can see in the Hospital Corporation of America PRS, essentially what they're going to be doing is realigning the frontage road, continuing east. This is not, and essentially what it's going to do is just tee down here in the short term. There is a longer term plan that we kind of think would be good, which is to eventually take this straight over and connect to Lincoln Road to be able to give that intersection additional distance as well. Okay, so the Conditions of approval that I wanted to kind of just run through with you are we had a change to condition 10B, and that was simply to state that it's an undivided roadway, not a divided roadway. That was just a typo. Condition 11C, we wanted to add some additional language just to make sure that everybody is clear that it's generally supposed to be designed as a type TS4 roadway. However, that's not an absolute. If there's some tweaking that needs to happen through the design exception process, subject to the county engineer's approval, that would be acceptable. And last but not least, on the existing PD site plan, there was an error that was omitted, an arrow rather, approximately right here on the site plan. Actually, that's being hidden by the, there we go. About halfway through, a right in, right out access arrow that was supposed to be on the plan. It was included in the transportation analysis, and trips were sent to that access. And so we simply would like to add the prior to certification condition to make sure that right in, right out access arrow is added back to the plan. Just generally, I think everybody's kind of touched on everything tonight. All of the analysis that went into it really did go into setting that 385-foot distance separation from the intersection, and that's necessary in order to achieve safe and efficient operation of that intersection in the future. I'm here to answer any questions if you have any.
No, you answered my questions.
Okay.
Thank you
Great.
so much.
Thank you.
All right, we'll go to the Planning Commission.
Melissa Leinhardt, Planning Commission staff. The subject property is located within the urban mixed-use 20 future land use category and in the urban service area. It is also located within the limits of the Riverview and Gibsonton community plans, as well as the South Shore area-wide systems plan. Because the subject property is located in the urban mixed-use 20 future land use category, a mix of uses is required per policy 19.1 of the future land use element. In order to meet that requirement, a condition has been added indicating that at least 2 distinct uses will be required to be developed within the plan development. And Planning Commission staff does recognize that a hotel motel use would be considered a distinct use separate from other CG uses. In addition, Objective 19 and Policy 19.2 include policy direction that mixed-use developments must be integrated and interconnected with each other. To that effect, the applicant is committing to internal vehicular and pedestrian connections within the project area. The surrounding area around the subject property contains a variety of commercial uses, as well as light industrial, multifamily, institutional uses, and some single-family residential development. The area near I-75, US Highway 301, and Big Bend is an area of intensity, which is reflective of the UMU future land use designation. The proposed plan development would be compatible with the existing development pattern, as well as consistent with the intensity that you would expect in the UMU 20 plan category. And based upon those considerations, Planning Commission staff finds the proposed plan development consistent with the future of Hillsborough Comprehensive Plan for unincorporated Hillsborough County, subject to the conditions proposed by Development Services.
All right, thank you so much. We'll call for anyone who would like to speak in favor. Anyone in support of the application? Seeing no one, anyone in opposition? No one. County staff, can I ask one question? I neglected to ask you, Mr. Robinson. I did not see the variation response form. You have seen one? Maybe, perhaps I just missed it in optics.
Well, to be fair, we've been babysitting this application for the better part of a year, and there's been a lot that's come in and out of that
There are a lot of
optics
documents
file.
there.
I can't say for sure. I mean, I'm pretty sure early on when I did the sufficiency review and just looked for completeness of the application that we had the information in there. I know there's been a lot of talk. I think, and maybe Mr. Penza can help us out here, but I think those variations were envisioned from the initial application. I think those requests were made.
I asked him, and he said he submitted one.
Yeah,
in
yeah,
the record.
and I can certainly go back and double check, and if we don't have one, I can see about getting that form
All right.
in the file.
Perfect. All right, thank you very much. Mr. Grady, did you have anything further? Okay. Mr. Weaver, anything additionally?
Thank you very much again, Ms. Finch, and thank you to Mr. Radcliffe, Mr. Robinson, all of you who worked so hard with us, Ms. Leinert. Thank you. It is classic urban fill that we respectfully request your approval, and yes, we are willing to confirm that there will be a cap of trips with respect to about 800 trips in the morning at AM peak. AM, and then there's a PM peak of also about 800, and it would not be in lieu of the 1.0. The 1.0 might for a site that was going to be relatively intense, with Mr. Ratliff's example, for example, of an economy hotel, where you'd have a third or an eighth of the site that actually went to the 1.0, then it would have to stop regardless of the trip count, and the rest of the site would be constrained by the fact that the trips would be used in that intense 1.0 FAR on an eighth or a third or whatever of the intensity of the hotel. Thank you for asking that, and we're agreeable to each one of those three changes that were just specified on the record by Mr. Ratliff.
All right, perfect. Thank you very much for your time and testimony.
Marshall Robinson, Development Services. Mr. May just informed me that the variation request form is in the file, Ms. Finch. This used to have an application number of 18-0097. This 18-009 or 0966 is the application that is the item tonight. So that variation form is filed in this folder under 18-0097 in the request folder, or in the application folder under request.
18-0997.
0097.
0097.
Yes, it still has the old application number on it. That might have been why it eluded you.
Okay, I appreciate the clarification. All right, then with that, we will close rezoning 18-000996 and go to the next case.
The next item is agenda item E4, rezoning application 18-1168. The applicant is Stewardship Homes LLC. The request is rezoned from RC6 to a planned development. Kara Woods will provide staff recommendation after presentation by the applicant.
Is the applicant here? Is the applicant here for agenda item E4? Mr. Grady, do we know if he's here or she? You want to take the last case and come back just to be sure? All right, let's put that case on hold and we'll call agenda item E5.
The next item is agenda item E5, rezoning application 18-1205. The applicant is Gardner, Brewer, Martinez, Montfort. The request is rezoned from RSC 6 to a planned development. Kara Woods will provide staff recommendation at their presentation by applicant.
Good evening.
Good evening. How are you?
Good, thank you.
Good. So address is 505 Kings Avenue. It's close to the Brandon Regional Hospital, just to the west of it. This is actually the sister PD of a site that we had rezoned in 2017.
Mr. Gardner, could you put your name
Oh,
in the
I'm
record?
sorry. Truett Gardner, 400 North Ashley Drive.
Thank you.
And so yes, it's a sister PD to a project we had rezoned last year for a 75,000 square foot medical office building. We had contemplated at that time, but the seller wasn't ready to sell yet, so now we're bringing them in together. There will be cross access between the two. The total square footage of this is substantially less than the other, 23,600 at maximum. Zoning staff as well as the Planning Commission have found this to be compatible and consistent. Every call that we've received has been supportive. It's consistent with the goals of the Brandon Community Plan. And then finally, just in reviewing the staff report, and I've talked to both James as well as Kara about this, just a couple of comments. One, there is a slight waiver. It's a slight reduction in the open space requirement, which would be for less than 1,800 square feet. Again, this is the companion rezoning. The property to the south has substantially more open space requirements. There's a large possibility we won't even need the 1,800 square feet, but just as the civil engineer was laying it out, that became a possibility, so wanted to ask for it. Secondly, there was a slight inconsistency in the staff report. The county stated that the county's staff report states that we are not in the urban service area. The Planning Commission staff says that we are. I looked while I was sitting, we definitely are in the urban service area, so just wanted to clarify that. And then secondly, note 7 in the staff report, this last sentence kind of dangles, and so we clarified that you do have the proper note from transportation in your backup materials. So it's the last sentence of note 7, which states the length and design of the turn lane extension and then ends. What that should go on to state is the turn lane extension shall be subject to review and approval of Hillsborough County Public Works.
Okay. So just to go back to the waiver real quick. So the waiver is specifically to which section?
It is to, let's see if it's stated. It's stated on the site plan, it's to a policy. Policy 14.5 is the way that it's phrased.
And it pertains to what?
The open space requirement.
Okay. And does it state on the site plan the specific request, what the requirement is and what you're asking for?
It does. Let's see. It states a waiver is requested to allow the open space requirement to be reduced from the .0385 required, which was 1.54 is the acreage times 0.25, to .35. This is a reduction of 0.04 acres. And then I did the math on that, and that's where I got to the less than 1,800 square foot number.
I see. Okay. All right, fair enough. Does that complete your presentation?
That does.
Thank you so much. Development Services.
Carol Woods, Development Services. The applicant is requesting rezoning to planned development located on the south, on South Kings Avenue. The request is to redevelop the property with 23,600 square feet of medical office. The subject property is located in the Res 12 comprehensive plan. North of the subject property is zoned RMC 16 and it's currently developed as multifamily. To the east and south of the subject property is zone PD 17-0393, which permits medical office uses. And west of the subject property is Kings Avenue, and a mix of single family and office development is on the other side of Kings Avenue to the west. In accordance with the Land Development Code requirement, a 20-foot Type B buffer and screening will be provided between the project and the multifamily use to the north. I did see the condition that was cut off. That was a copy and paste error there.
Are you aware of the waiver request Mr. Gardner referenced?
No. Let me look at the site plan. If it's open space, then for us it would be probably the impervious surface ratio, which I believe they requested. They requested a maximum impervious surface ratio of 0.70.
That's different than what Mr. Gardner talked about.
I'm not familiar with the policy.
Oh, it's at the very bottom of the site plan, the lower
Right.
right corner is what he's talking about.
I guess it's a policy of the comprehensive plan, though. If it's a policy 14.5, it wouldn't be a land development code requirement.
Okay, well, we can ask the planning commission. So you're not aware, because your staff report says no variations.
Right.
Or anything, so you're not aware of any waivers or variations they're requesting?
No, I was not aware of that.
Okay. All right, will there be a revised staff report to clean up that condition?
For the transportation condition, as well as the correction to the urban service area, yes.
Got it, okay, perfect. All right, thank you so much. Planning commission.
Melissa Leinhardt, Planning Commission staff. First, I will address the policy 14.5 in the future land use category. If that's what that waiver is referring to, it is reserved. There is actually not a policy 14.5. It's a space holder.
All right.
The subject property is located in the residential 12 future land use category. It is in the urban service area, and it is within the limits of the Brandon Community Plan. The Brandon Community Plan includes a goal with regard to advancing economic opportunity and providing a broader employment base in the community. Adding a new medical office building works toward meeting that goal. The overall area of the subject property is located in the Urban General District on the Brandon Character Districts map in the Brandon Community Plan, which is designed to accommodate retail, offices, and various residential housing types. A medical office building in this particular area also helps to meet that particular goal of the community plan. Because the subject property is located within 1,000 feet of the nearest qualifying intersection of Kings Avenue and Oakfield Drive, it does meet commercial locational criteria, and it is consistent with policy direction. The rezoning request is compatible with the existing development pattern, as the immediate area contains a large medical user, as well as over a dozen supporting medical offices. The area provides a concentration of medical uses that operate in tandem with the hospital, many of which are part of plan developments approved more than a decade ago. These uses are well established and are all part of a transitional land use pattern between the existing residential generally located south of the subject property and the heavier commercial properties located to the north of the subject property closer to Oakfield Drive. Based upon those considerations, Planning Commission staff finds the proposed plan development consistent with the future of Hillsborough Comprehensive Plan for unincorporated Hillsborough County, subject to the conditions recommended by Development Services.
All right, thank you so much. We'll call for anyone that wants to speak in favor or in opposition. Seeing no one. County staff? All right, Mr. Gardner, there seems to be a mystery about your waiver request.
So I was just, Chris Weddle with Aurora Civil Engineering is here, and somebody on his team was looking through the policies, thought they saw something, so that sparked that. But we were just talking, and he said that's when we were actually asking for maximum square footage. So he thinks it's not even necessary anymore. So if it clarifies everything, let's just
got it.
Forget that conversation ever happened.
Okay, fair enough. All right. Anything else to testify about?
That's it.
All right,
Thank
perfect.
you.
Then we'll close rezoning 18-1205. Regarding the case where the applicant was not here, I'm assuming he's still not here?
I think we'll just have to continue that one to the November ZHM.
Okay, so then
November 19th.
just for the record, we'll, because the applicant is not in attendance, we'll continue rezoning 18-1168 to the November 19th zoning hearing master hearing. And with that, we will adjourn the hearing. Thank you all for your time.